Raymond Cox stares at the misshapen infant in the incubator, his heart breaking at the thought of her impending fate. No one would adopt this ugly alien baby except him. The year is 2155, and the Arcturian galactic orphanage on Earth faces a crisis. Cleo, an unusually deformed Arcturian infant, lies rejected by countless potential parents. Her extra limbs twitch, and her asymmetrical facial features contort as she gurgles softly. Zorn, the Arcturian orphanage director, approaches Raymond. "Mr. Cox, I regret to inform you that Cleo will be euthanized in 24 hours if not adopted. It's Arcturian law for defective offspring." Raymond's eyes widen in shock. "Euthanized? But she's just a baby." "I understand your concern," Zorn replies, his tentacles rippling with what might be sympathy. "But raising an alien child, especially one with Cleo's unique attributes, would be challenging for a human." Raymond, a 35-year-old widower, feels a sudden, overwhelming urge to protect this helpless creature. "I'll do it. I'll adopt her." Zorn blinks his 3 eyes in surprise. "Are you certain? The paperwork alone dash." "I don't care," Raymond interrupts. "Start the process." As Raymond completes the adoption forms, he learns the heartbreaking truth. Cleo's biological Arcturian parents abandoned her due to her physical deformities. The orphanage staff, a mix of humans and Arcturians, react with a blend of admiration and skepticism. "You're a saint, Ray," says Sarah, a human caretaker, patting his shoulder. Glix, an Arcturian worker, warns, "This could have diplomatic repercussions." "Are you prepared for that?" Raymond nods, determined. He cradles Cleo in his arms and steps out into the bustling streets of New Chicago, Earth's primary hub for interstellar commerce and diplomacy. The megalopolis hums with activity, but Raymond's focus is solely on the precious bundle in his arms. As he enters his modest apartment, his neighbors' reactions are immediate and hostile. Mrs. Patel from across the hall gasps and slams her door shut. Mr. Johnson from downstairs shouts, "We don't want that thing here." Raymond's comlink buzzes. It's a message from the Arcturian embassy demanding he return Cleo for proper handling, according to their customs. He deletes it without hesitation. As night falls, Raymond gently places Cleo in a makeshift crib. Suddenly, she levitates slightly, her extra limbs glowing faintly. Raymond watches in awe, realizing there's more to Cleo than meets the eye. A notification pings on his tablet. It's a summons to appear before a joint human Arcturian tribunal to defend his right to adopt Cleo. As Raymond prepares for the battle ahead, his comlink buzzes again. An anonymous message warns him of a shadowy organization interested in Cleo's hidden abilities. Raymond looks at the sleeping infant, her features softened in slumber. He whispers, "Don't worry, Cleo. Dad's here, and I'm not going anywhere." Raymond's world shifted dramatically in the days following Cleo's adoption. The initial euphoria of saving the infant gave way to the harsh realities of caring for an alien child with unique needs. Cleo's extra limbs required special attention, and her asymmetrical features made feeding a challenge. Overwhelmed, Raymond sought help from Dr. Elena Martinez, a xenobiologist at the New Chicago Interspecies Medical Center. He cradled Cleo carefully as he entered the sterile white halls of the center, surrounded by a cacophony of alien languages and unfamiliar medical equipment. Dr. Martinez, a petite woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, examined Cleo with fascination. "Mr. Cox, Cleo's physiology is unlike anything I've seen in Arcturian infants. I'd like to conduct regular checkups if you're amenable." Raymond nodded, relief washing over him. "Thank you, doctor. I'm in over my head here." As they left the medical center, Raymond's comlink chimed. The human Arcturian tribunal date had been set. His stomach churned with anxiety. That evening, Raymond contacted Marcus Hawkins, a human rights lawyer known for his work in interspecies adoption cases. Hawkins' holographic image flickered to life in Raymond's living room, revealing a grizzled face etched with years of legal battles. "Mr. Cox, I've reviewed your case," Hawkins said, his voice gravelly. "It's unprecedented, but that's exactly why I'm taking it. Pro bono." Raymond exhaled. "Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. I can't lose her." As the days passed, Raymond noticed something extraordinary. Cleo, barely a month old, began solving simple puzzles meant for much older children. Her extra limbs moved with uncanny coordination as she manipulated shapes and patterns. Concerned, Raymond confided in Dr. Martinez during their next appointment. The doctor's eyes widened as she observed Cleo's abilities. "This level of cognitive development is extraordinary, even for Arcturians. We need to run more tests." One evening, as Raymond returned from work, he found his apartment door ajar. His heart raced as he rushed inside, calling for Cleo. The infant gurgled happily from her crib unharmed. Raymond's relief was short-lived as he noticed his computer blinking with a security breach alert. Hawkins arranged for Raymond and Cleo to move to a safe house. As they settled into the sparse but secure apartment, a knock at the door startled them. Raymond opened it cautiously to reveal an Arcturian diplomat. "I am Grax," the alien said, its tentacles rippling. "May I come in? I have information about Cleo's parents." Inside, Grax revealed a shocking truth. Cleo's biological parents were renowned scientists. They vanished shortly after abandoning her. "We believe Cleo may be the result of genetic experimentation." Raymond's mind reeled. Is that why the Arcturian government wants her back? Grax nodded solemnly. "Among other reasons. You must be cautious, Mr. Cox." As Grax left, Raymond noticed his neighbor watching from across the hall. The man's military posture and watchful eyes spoke of years of service. The neighbor approached, extending a hand. Colonel James Blackwood, retired. "I couldn't help overhearing. Seems you could use some help." Raymond hesitated, then shook the offered hand. "Raymond Cox. And yes, I think I could." Over the next few days, Blackwood proved to be an unexpected ally. He used his military connections to gather intelligence on the organization targeting Cleo, while Raymond and Hawkins prepared for the Tribunal. As the hearing date loomed closer, Raymond received an encrypted message on his comlink. The sender, anonymous, claimed to have crucial information about Cleo's origins and the Arcturian government's true motives. Raymond stared at the message, Cleo sleeping peacefully in his arms. The weight of the decision pressed down on him. Trust the informant and potentially endanger Cleo, or ignore the message and risk losing vital information. He looked at Cleo's sleeping form, her extra limbs twitching gently in her sleep. Whatever he decided, he knew one thing for certain. He would protect this child, despite the toll. Raymond's thumb hovered over the comlink, the encrypted message burning a hole in his conscience. He glanced at Cleo, her misshapen form rising and falling with each peaceful breath. The decision caused great concern on him, but the promise of crucial information about her origins proved too tempting to ignore. With a deep breath, he tapped the screen, confirming his agreement to meet the anonymous source. The response came swiftly, providing coordinates for a location in the outskirts of New Chicago. "I hope I'm not making a mistake," Raymond muttered, gently placing Cleo in her crib. He contacted Colonel Blackwood, briefing him on the situation. The ex-military man insisted on accompanying Raymond to the meeting, his weathered face creased with concern. "I'll watch your back," Blackwood assured him, checking the charge on his concealed plasma pistol. The rendezvous point turned out to be an abandoned warehouse on the city's fringe. Raymond's heart raced as he and Blackwood approached, the colonel's eyes scanning for potential threats. A figure emerged from the shadows, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Mr. Cox, I'm Dr. Ava Mason. Thank you for coming." Raymond studied the woman before him. Her lab coat was wrinkled, her eyes tired but alert. "You have information about Cleo's parents?" Dr. Mason nodded, her voice low and urgent. "I worked with them on Project Stellar Reach. It was meant to be a breakthrough in Arcturian genetic enhancement, designed for deep space exploration. But they discovered something troubling." As Dr. Mason revealed the dark implications of the project, Raymond's mind reeled. The knowledge that Cleo might be the product of such experimentation filled him with a mix of awe and dread. Their conversation was cut short by Blackwood's warning. "We've got company. Time to move." As they hurried back to Raymond's apartment, the weight of this new information pressed down on him. He knew it would be crucial for the upcoming tribunal, but it also painted a target on Cleo's back. The next morning, a sharp knock at the door jolted Raymond awake. He opened it to find a stern-faced man in a crisp suit. "Agent Derek Reeves, Human Arcturian Adoption Agency. We're here for an unscheduled inspection." Raymond's stomach dropped as he let the agent and his team into the apartment. They scrutinized every corner, making notes and asking probing questions about his ability to care for an alien child. As Agent Reeves examined Cleo's crib, the infant stirred. To everyone's shock, a small toy near the crib began to levitate, floating gently towards Cleo's outstretched hand. Reeves' eyes widened. What in the name of... Raymond quickly scooped up Cleo, his heart pounding. "She's... special," he managed to say. The agent's face hardened. "This changes things, Mr. Cox. We'll need to conduct a full evaluation of the child's abilities." As the HAA team left, Raymond's comlink buzzed with an incoming call from Dr. Martinez. "Raymond, I need you to bring Cleo in immediately. Her last test results. They're like nothing I've ever seen." The Interspecies Medical Center was a flurry of activity when they arrived. Dr. Martinez ushered them into a private room, her face a mix of excitement and concern. "Cleo's genetic structure is evolving at an unprecedented rate," she explained, pointing to a holographic display of swirling DNA strands. "Her abilities may be just the beginning." As they discussed the implications of Cleo's development, a commotion outside caught their attention. Raymond peered out the window to see a growing crowd gathering in the street below. Some held signs supporting his adoption of Cleo, while others brandished anti-alien slogans. Officer Sarah Martinez and her team struggled to maintain order as the two factions clashed. The scene was a stark reminder of the broader impact Cleo's case was having on human Arcturian relations. Raymond's comlink chimed again. It was Marcus Hawkins, his voice tense. "Raymond, I've been reviewing the laws surrounding Cleo's case. I think I've found an angle that could change everything. We need to meet." As Raymond prepared to leave with Cleo, Dr. Martinez placed a hand on his arm. "Be careful, Raymond. There are forces at work here beyond what any of us fully understand." Outside, the crowd's chanting grew louder. Raymond clutched Cleo closer, her extra limbs wrapping around him instinctively. As they made their way through the throng, protected by Officer Martinez and her officers, Raymond couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of their struggles. Cleo stirred in his arms, her asymmetrical features scrunching up as if sensing his unease. Raymond stroked her head gently, whispering, "It's okay, little one. We're in this together." As they reached the relative safety of his vehicle, Raymond's mind raced with the challenges ahead. The Tribunal, Cleo's evolving abilities, the mysterious Project Chimera. Each obstacle seemed more daunting than the last. But looking down at the strange, beautiful child in his arms, Raymond knew he would face whatever came their way. With a deep breath, he started the engine, ready to meet Hawkins and plan their next move in this interstellar battle for Cleo's future. With a determined nod, Raymond shifted gears and pulled away from the curb, leaving the chaos of the medical center behind. As the days passed, Cleo's condition began to deteriorate rapidly. Her once vibrant skin took on a sickly pallor, and her movements became sluggish. Raymond watched helplessly as the child he'd grown to love suffered before his eyes. Dr. Martinez worked tirelessly, running test after test, but the results only confirmed their worst fears. Cleo's unique genetic structure was breaking down, and without intervention, she wouldn't survive much longer. It was in this moment of desperation that Dr. Ava Mason approached Raymond with a risky proposal. "There's a secure Arcturian facility on Mars," she explained, her voice low and urgent. "It houses the original research from Project Stellar Reach. If we can access that data, we might find a way to stabilize Cleo's condition." Raymond's heart raced at the thought. Infiltrate an Arcturian facility? That's impossible. "Not with the right team," a gruff voice interjected. Colonel Blackwood stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with purpose. "I've got some contacts who might be able to help us pull this off." Raymond looked down at Cleo, her labored breathing tearing at his heart. He knew the risks were enormous, but what choice did he have? "All right," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Let's do it." The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Colonel Blackwood's military expertise proved invaluable as they planned the operation. Dr. Martinez insisted on joining the team, determined to gather any medical data that could save Cleo's life. Meanwhile, Marcus Hawkins worked tirelessly to delay the Tribunal, buying them precious time. "I've managed to secure a continuance," he informed Raymond via encrypted comlink. "But it won't hold forever. You need to move fast." As the infiltration team prepared to depart, Raymond entrusted Cleo to the care of Officer Sarah Martinez. The police officer's eyes softened as she took the ailing child in her arms. "I'll protect her with my life," she promised. The journey to Mars was tense and silent, each team member lost in their own thoughts. As they approached the red planet, Dr. Mason reviewed their plan one final time. "Remember, we're posing as a sanctioned research team. Grax's credentials should get us through the initial security checkpoints, but after that, we're on our own." Their craft touched down on the Martian surface, the Arcturian research outpost looming before them. Raymond's heart pounded as they approached the facility's entrance, praying that their false credentials would hold up under scrutiny. To their relief, the Arcturian guard barely glanced at their identification before waving them through. As they entered the facility, Raymond couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into the lion's den. The team made their way through the sterile corridors, following Dr. Mason's lead. They descended into the lower levels, where the most sensitive research was conducted. The air grew thick with tension as they encountered increasingly complex security measures. Just as they reached a promising-looking laboratory, alarms began to blare throughout the facility. Colonel Blackwood cursed under his breath. "We've got company," he growled, peering around a corner. "And it's not the Arcturians." A group of armed humans in sleek black uniforms moved with military precision through the corridor. Raymond's blood ran cold as he recognized the insignia on their shoulders. Project Chimera. "They must have tracked us here," Dr. Mason whispered, her face pale. "We need to move fast." The team split up, with Colonel Blackwood taking up a defensive position to hold off the Project Chimera operatives. Raymond and Dr. Mason raced to access the facility's central database, while Dr. Martinez searched for biological samples that might hold the key to Cleo's survival. As Raymond worked to bypass the Arcturian security protocols, he could hear the sound of weapons fire echoing through the facility. The knowledge that people were fighting, perhaps dying, because of his actions took a toll on him. Suddenly, a new voice cut through the chaos. "Stand down immediately." The command, spoken in perfect English, came from an Arcturian Raymond recognized. Zal, the embassy representative he'd encountered back on Earth. Caught between Zal's forces and the advancing Project Chimera operatives, Raymond made a split-second decision. He stepped out from cover, hands raised. "Zal, please," he called out. "We need to talk." The Arcturian's eyes narrowed, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "You have exactly 1 minute to explain yourself, human, before I have you arrested for espionage." Raymond took a deep breath, knowing that everything, Cleo's life, the future of human-Arcturian relations, hinged on what he said next. "It's about the child," he began, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "The one I adopted. She's dying, Zal, and the answers we need to save her are in this facility." As Raymond spoke, explaining Cleo's condition and the desperate measures that had led them to this point, he saw something shift in Zal's expression. The Arcturian's tentacles stilled, and a look of what might have been compassion flickered across his alien features. Before Zal could respond, a new figure emerged from the shadows. A human man, his face twisted into a cold smile, leveled a weapon at Raymond's head. "I'm afraid this touching reunion will have to wait," he sneered. "Victor Crane, Project Chimera, and you, Mr. Cox, have something we want." "Want?" Victor Crane's cold eyes bore into Raymond as he kept the weapon trained on him. Raymond's mind raced, searching for a way out of this deadly standoff. Suddenly, a blur of motion caught his eye. Colonel Blackwood emerged from behind a row of equipment, tackling Crane to the ground. The weapon clattered across the floor as the two men grappled. "Go!" Blackwood shouted, pinning Crane down. "Get what you need and get out of here." Raymond didn't hesitate. He rushed back to the terminal, fingers flying across the holographic interface as he downloaded the crucial data. Dr. Mason joined him, her expertise guiding them to the most vital information. Meanwhile, Dr. Martinez burst into the room, clutching a sealed container. "I've got it," she panted. "Biological samples that could be the key to saving Cleo." Zal, the Arcturian representative, stood frozen for a moment, tentacles writhing in apparent indecision. Then, to Raymond's surprise, he moved to block the entrance. "Go," he said, his voice resonating with a strange harmony. "I will delay any reinforcements." As they fled the facility, alarms blaring and chaos erupting around them, Raymond's thoughts were solely on Cleo. They had what they needed, but would it be enough? Would they make it back in time? The journey back to Earth was a blur of tension and hope. Dr. Martinez worked tirelessly in the ship's makeshift lab, analyzing the data and samples they'd retrieved. Raymond paced the small cabin, his worry for Cleo growing with each passing moment. Upon landing, they rushed to the Interspecies Medical Center. Officer Sarah Martinez met them at the entrance, Cleo cradled in her arms. The child's skin had taken on a sickly gray hue, her breathing shallow and labored. "She's getting worse," Sarah said, her voice tight with concern. "The doctors don't know how much longer she can hold on." Raymond took Cleo into his arms, his heart breaking at how fragile she felt. "We're here now," he whispered. "We're going to make you better." Dr. Martinez sprang into action, coordinating with the medical center staff to begin the experimental treatment. Hours passed in a haze of medical jargon and tense waiting. Raymond refused to leave Cleo's side, watching as various machines and devices were connected to her small form. Finally, Dr. Martinez emerged from the lab, her face a mix of exhaustion and cautious optimism. "We've developed a gene therapy using the Arcturian data," she explained. "It's experimental, but it's our best chance at stabilizing her condition." Raymond nodded, giving his consent. As the treatment began, Cleo's body glowed with a soft, pulsating light. Her extra limbs twitched and curled, and her asymmetrical features seemed to shift subtly. Days passed, with Raymond barely leaving the medical center. Slowly, miraculously, Cleo's condition began to improve. Her skin regained its vibrant hue, and her movements became more animated. But it wasn't until Cleo opened her eyes, locking gazes with Raymond, that he realized something profound had changed. A wave of emotion, not his own, washed over him. Love, gratitude, and a sense of safety flowed from Cleo directly into his mind. She's communicating telepathically, Dr. Martinez gasped, her eyes wide with wonder. As news of Cleo's recovery and newfound abilities spread, Raymond knew their challenges were far from finished. Marcus Hawkins contacted him urgently, his voice tense even over the encrypted line. "Raymond, we need to move quickly," Hawkins said. "I've secured a location for the hearing with the Human-Arcturian Joint Committee. It's our best chance to present your case and expose the truth about Project Chimera." Raymond agreed, but his stomach knotted with anxiety. The hearing would determine not just Cleo's fate, but potentially the future of human-Arcturian relations. The day of the hearing arrived with a sense of foreboding. Raymond, Cleo, Dr. Martinez, and Colonel Blackwood were escorted to a nondescript building on the outskirts of the city. Inside, they found themselves facing the stern faces of the Joint Committee, led by human diplomat Richard Steele and Arcturian Representative Zora. As Raymond began presenting their evidence, detailing the genetic experimentation and subsequent cover-up, he felt a gentle pressure in his mind. Cleo, secure in his arms, was reaching out not just to him, but to everyone in the room. Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber as committee members experienced Cleo's thoughts and emotions firsthand. The Arcturian's tentacles writhed in what seemed to be astonishment, while the human's eyes widened in disbelief. Just as the committee appeared to be swaying in their favor, the doors burst open. Agent Derek Reeves stormed in, his face a mask of fierce dedication. "Stop these proceedings immediately," he commanded. "I have evidence that will change everything." The room erupted into chaos as Reeves revealed the true extent of the conspiracy behind Project Chimera. His investigation had uncovered a web of corruption that reached the highest levels of both human and Arcturian governments. As accusations flew and committee members argued, Raymond seized a moment to make his final plea. "Look at Cleo," he urged, his voice cutting through the din. "She represents the best of both our species. She's living proof that we can coexist, that we can learn from each other. Don't let fear and greed destroy this chance for true cooperation." The committee fell silent, all eyes on Raymond and Cleo. The child's gaze swept across the room, her newfound abilities allowing her to convey a sense of hope and unity that words alone could not express. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the building. Smoke billowed through shattered windows as armed figures in black tactical gear swarmed into the room. At their head was Victor Crane, his face twisted with malice. "The child comes with us," Crane snarled, raising his weapon. "Project Chimera will not be denied." Colonel Blackwood sprang into action, coordinating with the security personnel to form a protective barrier around Raymond and Cleo. The room descended into chaos as gunfire erupted and committee members scrambled for cover. In the midst of the firefight, Cleo's eyes began to glow with an otherworldly light. A shimmering energy field expanded from her small form, enveloping Raymond and rippling outward. Crane and his mercenaries were thrown back, their weapons rendered useless. As the dust settled, the committee members emerged from their hiding places, staring in awe at Cleo and the incapacitated attackers. The display of power, combined with the emotional connection Cleo had forged earlier, seemed to be the final push needed to sway their decision. Richard Steele stepped forward, his voice shaky but resolute. "In light of these extraordinary circumstances, the committee has reached a preliminary decision. Cleo will remain in the custody of Raymond Cox, pending a full investigation into Project Chimera and the allegations of government conspiracy." Relief washed over Raymond, but he knew this was only the beginning. As they were led out of the building under heavy security, he could see the streets filled with protesters on both sides of the issue. The world was changing, and Cleo was at the center of it all. Agent Reeves approached them as they reached their transport. "We're establishing a task force to root out the corruption and dismantle the illegal research programs," he informed them. "I'll be working with Zal to ensure both human and Arcturian interests are represented. Raymond nodded, grateful for the agent's support but wary of the challenges that lay ahead. As they boarded the vehicle, Cleo's thoughts brushed against his mind once more. Despite the uncertainty of their future, he felt a profound sense of hope. The transport hummed to life, whisking them away from the chaos of the hearing. Raymond held Cleo close, knowing that their journey was not nearly finished. The threats from Project Chimera and other hostile forces still loomed, and the full extent of Cleo's abilities remained a mystery. As they sped through the city, Raymond caught glimpses of the world they were fighting to change. Humans and Arcturians stood side by side in the streets, some in support, others in protest. The line between the two species, once so clear, was beginning to blur. Cleo stirred in his arms, her asymmetrical features scrunching up as if sensing his thoughts. Raymond stroked her head gently, marveling at the bond they shared. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Together, no matter what came their way. As the transport wound its way through the outskirts of New Chicago, Raymond felt a sudden shift in direction. The vehicle slowed, then turned onto a narrow, tree-lined road. Cleo stirred in his arms, her mismatched eyes blinking open. "Where are we going?" Raymond asked the driver, a stern-faced woman in a crisp uniform. "Secure location," she replied tersely. "Orders from Agent Reeves." Raymond's unease grew as they approached a nondescript compound nestled in a clearing. High walls surrounded the perimeter, dotted with what looked like advanced security systems. The gates slid open silently, admitting their vehicle. As they stepped out, Raymond was greeted by a familiar face. Agent Reeves strode towards them, flanked by Zal and a team of human and Arcturian operatives. "Welcome to your new home," Reeves said, his expression a mix of persistence and concern. "This is the headquarters of the Interspecies Security Task Force. You'll be safe here while we deal with the fallout from the hearing." Raymond's eyes widened as he took in the scale of the operation. "All this for us?" Zal's tentacles rippled, a gesture Raymond had come to recognize as agreement. "The child's safety is paramount," the Arcturian stated. "We cannot underestimate the resources of those who would seek to exploit her abilities." As if on cue, Cleo's thoughts brushed against Raymond's mind. He felt her curiosity, tinged with a hint of apprehension at their new surroundings. They were led into the main building, a sprawling complex that seemed to hum with hidden technology. Dr. Martinez was waiting for them, her face lighting up at the sight of Cleo. "I've set up a lab here," she explained, guiding them down a corridor. "We need to monitor Cleo's progress closely. Her abilities are evolving." The makeshift laboratory was a marvel of human and Arcturian technology. Holographic displays flickered with data streams, while unfamiliar instruments hummed softly. Dr. Martinez gently coaxed Cleo onto an examination table, murmuring reassurances. As the doctor worked, Raymond felt a strange sensation. The room seemed to blur around the edges, and he caught fleeting glimpses of places he'd never seen before. A red desert under twin suns, a city of crystalline spires, a stormy ocean teeming with bioluminescent life. "Raymond," Dr. Martinez's voice snapped him back to reality. "Are you all right?" He blinked, disoriented. I think I saw what Cleo was seeing." "How is that possible?" The doctor's eyes widened. "It seems her telepathic range is expanding, and not just with humans and Arcturians. Look at this." She gestured to a nearby console. As Cleo focused on it, the display flickered and changed, responding to her thoughts. "She's interfacing directly with our systems," Dr. Martinez breathed. "The implications are staggering." Raymond felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that others would see Cleo's abilities as a weapon, a tool to be used. His grip on her tightened protectively. Over the next few days, Raymond struggled to adjust to their new life in the compound. The constant presence of security personnel was unsettling, even if he understood the necessity. Cleo, however, seemed to thrive in the new environment. Her health improved rapidly, and she delighted in exploring her expanding abilities. One afternoon, as Raymond watched Cleo communicate telepathically with a young Arcturian researcher, Agent Reeves pulled him aside. "We've made some progress in the investigation," Reeves said in a low voice. "Several high-ranking officials have been arrested, both human and Arcturian. But the real masterminds behind Project Chimera are still out there." Raymond nodded grimly. "And Crane?" Reeves' expression darkened. "In the wind. But we've got intel suggesting he's regrouping, gathering resources. He won't give up easily." As if to underscore the agent's words, alarms suddenly blared throughout the compound. Security personnel rushed past, weapons drawn. "Perimeter breach in Sector 7. A voice crackled over the intercom. Raymond's heart raced as he scooped Cleo into his arms. "What's happening?" Reeves was already moving, gesturing for them to follow. "We need to get you to the safe room. Now." As they hurried through the corridors, Raymond caught glimpses of the chaos unfolding outside. Flashes of weapons fire lit up the evening sky, and the air thrummed with the sound of energy shields activating. They reached a heavily fortified door, which slid open at Reeves' command. Inside, they found Colonel Blackwood coordinating the defense from a bank of monitors. "Status report," Reeves barked as they entered. Blackwood's face was grim. "Multiple hostiles, heavily armed. They've disabled our outer defenses somehow. We're holding them off, but—" His words were cut off as the building shook with a massive explosion. Cleo whimpered, burying her face in Raymond's chest. "It's okay, sweetheart," Raymond murmured, even as fear gripped his heart. "We're safe here." But as the sounds of battle drew closer, Raymond couldn't shake the feeling that their enemies were closing in. He looked down at Cleo, her mismatched eyes wide with fear and something else. Dedication. In that moment, Raymond realized that their greatest challenge yet was only beginning. The future of human-Arcturian relations, and perhaps the fate of both species, rested on the shoulders of this extraordinary child. And he would do whatever it took to protect her, and guide her through whatever trials lay ahead. As Raymond contemplated their uncertain future, Agent Reeves approached with a grim expression. "We received new intelligence," he said in a low voice. "It's not safe for you to remain here. We're relocating you to a more secure location." Raymond's heart sank. "Where?" "Luna," Reeves replied, his eyes darting around the room. "The lunar base is our best option for keeping Cleo safe and continuing the investigation." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Raymond and Cleo were ushered onto a high-security shuttle, surrounded by a protective detail led by Colonel Blackwood. As they broke through Earth's atmosphere, Raymond held Cleo close, watching her eyes widen with wonder at the sight of her home planet shrinking beneath them. The journey to Luna was mercifully uneventful, but Raymond couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in his stomach. As they approached the lunar base, its gleaming domes and interconnected structures came into view, a testament to human-Arcturian cooperation. Upon landing, they were greeted by Admiral Jax Thornton, a tall, imposing figure with a face etched by years of interstellar conflicts. His determined eyes softened slightly as it fell on Cleo. "Welcome to Luna Base," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "I'm Admiral Thornton. We've prepared secure quarters for you both." As they made their way through the base's winding corridors, Cleo's grip on Raymond's hand tightened. He could feel her anxiety mingling with excitement through their mental link. "It's okay, sweetheart," he murmured. "We're safe here." Suddenly, Cleo's eyes lit up. She reached out towards a nearby control panel, her fingers hovering inches from its surface. To Raymond's amazement, the panel came to life, displays flickering and changing without physical contact. Admiral Thornton's eyebrows shot up. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. Dr. Martinez mentioned her abilities, but seeing it in person. Raymond nodded, a mixture of pride and concern washing over him. She's been developing new skills almost daily. The low gravity here, I'm not sure how it might affect her. As if on cue, Dr. Martinez appeared around a corner, her face lighting up at the sight of them. "Raymond, Cleo, I'm so glad you made it safely. We have so much to discuss." Over the next few days, Raymond watched in awe as Cleo adapted to her new environment. The lower gravity seemed to energize her, and her abilities grew at an astonishing rate. Under Dr. Martinez's careful observation, Cleo learned to manipulate small objects, making them float and dance in the air with mere thoughts. But their relative peace was short-lived. A series of inexplicable malfunctions began to plague the base. Life support systems fluctuated wildly, and communication arrays failed at random intervals. Colonel Blackwood, suspicion etched on his face, launched a full investigation. "We can't rule out Project Chimera infiltrators," he told Raymond one evening, his voice low. "Stay alert and keep Cleo close." The night before the tribunal was set to begin, Raymond was jolted awake by blaring alarms. The room was plunged into darkness, emergency lights casting an eerie red glow. Cleo whimpered beside him, her fear palpable through their mental link. "Security breach in Sectors 3 and 4, a computerized voice announced. All personnel, implement lockdown procedures immediately." Raymond scooped Cleo into his arms, his heart pounding. The door to their quarters burst open, revealing Colonel Blackwood, his weapon drawn. "We need to move now," he barked. "Project Chimera operatives have infiltrated the base. They're after Cleo." As they raced through the dimly lit corridors, the sounds of combat echoed around them. Bursts of energy weapons illuminated the darkness, and the acrid smell of ozone filled the air. Rounding a corner, they came face to face with a group of masked figures. Raymond's blood ran cold as he recognized the insignia on their uniforms: Project Chimera. "Hand over the child," one of them demanded, raising a menacing-looking weapon. Before anyone could react, Cleo's eyes began to glow. The air around them seemed to ripple and distort. Suddenly, the Project Chimera operatives were lifted off their feet, pinned against the walls by an invisible force. Admiral Thornton, who had appeared with a security team, stared in disbelief. "By all the stars," he whispered. As the last of the intruders were subdued, Raymond held Cleo close, marveling at her power and the responsibility it entailed. The battle was won, but he knew their struggle was just the beginning. Project Chimera's reach was longer than they had imagined, and the path ahead was fraught with danger. Yet, as he looked into Cleo's mismatched eyes, Raymond felt a surge of drive. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, forging a new future for humans and Arcturians alike. The lunar base faded into the distance as the shuttle carrying Raymond and Cleo began its descent towards Earth. Raymond held Cleo's hand, feeling her mix of excitement and apprehension through their mental link. As they entered the atmosphere, the shuttle's heat shields glowed, casting a warm orange light across their faces. "We're almost home," Raymond whispered, giving Cleo's hand a reassuring squeeze. Upon touchdown, they were immediately surrounded by a team of heavily armed security personnel. Agent Reeves approached, his face etched with concern. "We need to move quickly," he said, ushering them into an armored vehicle. "You're being taken to a secure location." As they sped away from the landing site, Raymond noticed they were heading towards the mountains. The vehicle wound its way up steep, winding roads until they reached what appeared to be a dead end. Suddenly, a section of the mountainside slid open, revealing a hidden entrance. The vehicle plunged into darkness, descending deep into the heart of the mountain. When they finally emerged, Raymond's eyes widened at the sight before him. A vast underground complex sprawled out in all directions, bustling with activity. "Welcome to the Interspecies Defense Coalition facility," Agent Reeves announced as they disembarked. "This is where we'll make our stand against Project Chimera." Admiral Thornton greeted them, his expression grave. "I'm glad you made it safely. We have much to discuss." As they walked through the facility, Raymond marveled at the seamless integration of human and Arcturian technology. Holographic displays flickered with data streams, while unfamiliar alien devices hummed with energy. They were led to a large conference room where a group of scientists and military personnel waited. Among them was a tall, lanky man with wild hair and thick glasses who immediately approached them. "Fascinating," he muttered, peering at Cleo intently. "Simply fascinating. The genetic markers are extraordinary." Raymond instinctively pulled Cleo closer, causing the man to blink in surprise. "Oh, where are my manners?" he said, extending a hand. "Dr. Isaac Stern, lead geneticist. I'll be overseeing the study of your daughter's unique physiology." Raymond shook the offered hand warily. "Study?" Admiral Thornton stepped in. "Dr. Stern's research is crucial to understanding and protecting Cleo. But I assure you, her well-being is our top priority." Before Raymond could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Security personnel rushed past, weapons drawn. "Perimeter breach in Sector 5. A voice announced over the intercom. Colonel Blackwood burst into the room, his face grim. "We have a situation. Follow me." They hurried through winding corridors until they reached the command center. Monitors displayed a chaotic scene unfolding in one of the maintenance areas. "One of our workers went berserk," Blackwood explained. "He's sabotaging critical systems." Cleo tugged on Raymond's sleeve, her eyes wide. "Daddy, I can help." Raymond hesitated, remembering Dr. Martinez's warnings about overtaxing Cleo's abilities. But as the situation grew more dire, he nodded reluctantly. Cleo closed her eyes, concentrating. The air around her seemed to ripple, and suddenly, the facility's systems began responding to her mental commands. Security doors slammed shut, isolating the saboteur. "There," Cleo said, pointing to one of the monitors. "He's not who he says he is." The screen zoomed in on the trapped man, revealing a familiar insignia hidden beneath his torn uniform. Project Chimera. Admiral Thornton's eyes widened. How did they infiltrate our ranks so quickly? As security teams moved to apprehend the saboteur, Cleo suddenly went limp in Raymond's arms. "Cleo," he cried, cradling her unconscious form. Dr. Martinez rushed forward, her medical scanner already in hand. "Her vitals are stable, but she's severely drained. We need to get her to the medical bay immediately." As they carried Cleo to the infirmary, Raymond's mind raced. The threat of Project Chimera loomed larger than ever, and Cleo's powers were growing faster than anyone had anticipated. He realized that to protect his daughter, he would need to take a more active role in her development. In the days that followed, Raymond worked closely with Colonel Blackwood to devise a training regimen for Cleo. They focused on control and restraint, teaching her to use her abilities judiciously. "Remember, sweetheart," Raymond said during one session, "having power doesn't mean you always have to use it. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is show mercy." Cleo nodded solemnly, her mismatched eyes filled with understanding beyond her years. Their routine was interrupted one morning by the arrival of Agent Reeves and Zal. The Arcturians' tentacles rippled with agitation as they delivered their report. "Project Chimera's influence runs deeper than we imagined," Reeves said, his voice low. "We've uncovered sleeper agents in key positions throughout Earth's government and military." Admiral Thornton's face darkened. "Even within the IDC?" Zal's voice resonated in their minds. "We cannot rule out the possibility. Trust has become a precious commodity. As the implications of this news sank in, an alert flashed on the command center's main screen. A technician's voice rang out, tense with urgency. "Sir, long-range sensors have detected an unidentified object approaching Earth at high speed. Energy signature is unlike anything we've seen before." The room erupted into a flurry of activity as analysts scrambled to make sense of the data. Amid the chaos, a message came through on a secure channel. Admiral Thornton's eyebrows shot up as he read it. "It's from Victor Crane," he announced. "He wants a defect. Says he has critical information about Project Chimera's endgame." Raymond felt a chill run down his spine. What does he want in exchange? Thornton met his gaze. "He'll only surrender to you and Cleo. Says you're the only ones who can tell if he's lying." As the command center debated the merits of Crane's offer, Raymond looked down at Cleo. She nodded slightly, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and tenacity. "We'll do it," Raymond said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his heart. "But we do this our way." Dr. Martinez approached, holding a sleek, form-fitting suit. This should help regulate Cleo's abilities and protect her from technological overload. But please be careful. As Raymond and Cleo prepared to leave, Colonel Blackwood assembled a strike team to accompany them. The facility's massive doors ground open, revealing a high-speed transport waiting outside. Raymond took a deep breath, squeezing Cleo's hand. As they boarded the transport, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were hurtling towards a confrontation that would change everything. Behind them, the mysterious object in space continued its inexorable approach to Earth, a silent harbinger of the challenges to come. Come. As the transport sped towards a rendezvous point, Raymond couldn't shake the feeling that they were hurtling into a storm of unprecedented magnitude. The abandoned mining facility on the outskirts of New Chicago loomed before them, a stark silhouette against the twilight sky. Rusted metal structures and dormant machinery cast long shadows across the barren landscape. Colonel Blackwood's voice crackled through the transport's comm system. "Perimeter team, initiate sweep protocol. I want every inch of this place scanned before we move in." Raymond watched through the view screen as IDC operatives fanned out, their advanced sensor arrays pulsing with soft blue light. Beside him, Cleo fidgeted in her new protective suit, her mismatched eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Remember what we practiced," Raymond said softly, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "Stay focused, and if anything feels wrong, tell me immediately." Cleo nodded, her face set with commitment beyond her years. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as Colonel Blackwood's team methodically cleared the area. Finally, the colonel's voice returned, tight with tension. "Immediate vicinity secure. Crane has been spotted. Stand by for contact." Raymond's heart raced as he watched Victor Crane emerge from a concealed entrance, his hands raised high. The man looked nothing like the confident Project Chimera operative Raymond remembered. Crane's face was gaunt, his eyes darting nervously as he approached the transport. "He wants to speak to you directly," Colonel Blackwood reported. "I advise against it, but the choice is yours." Raymond took a deep breath, weighing his options. Before he could respond, a low hum filled the air. Cleo's suit had come to life, emitting a soft, pulsating glow. "Raymond, this is Dr. Martinez." A new voice cut in urgently. "Cleo's readings are spiking. Something in the environment is triggering her abilities. Proceed with extreme caution." "Understood," Raymond replied, his determination hardening. He turned to Cleo, meeting her gaze. "Stay close to me, sweetheart. We'll face this together." The transport's door hissed open, and Raymond stepped out with Cleo at his side. The cool night air carried the scent of rust and long-abandoned industry. Crane's eyes widened as they approached, a mix of fear and wonder crossing his face. "My God," Crane whispered, She's even more extraordinary than I imagined. Raymond's expression resolute. You said you had information. Start talking. Crane nodded, glancing nervously at the IDC operatives surrounding them. Project Chimera's goals go far beyond what you've imagined. They're not just trying to create super soldiers or spies. They want to forge a new species entirely, hybrids capable of thriving in environments humans could never survive. Why? Raymond demanded, feeling Cleo's grip on his hand tighten. Resources, Crane replied, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Planets rich in minerals, energy sources, places we can't touch with our current limitations. But with beings like Cleo, he trailed off, his gaze fixed on the child. Suddenly, Cleo stiffened beside Raymond. Her eyes blazed with an intense blue light, and her voice echoed in his mind with crystal clarity. Daddy, danger. The world erupted into chaos. Explosions rocked the facility, sending plumes of debris into the air. IDC operatives scattered, returning fire against unseen assailants. Through the smoke and confusion, Raymond caught sight of a figure striding purposefully towards them, a tall, lean man with piercing eyes and a cruel smile. Ven, Crane gasped, his face draining of color. It's Dr. Elias Ven. He's alive, and he's the one behind everything. Raymond scooped Cleo into his arms and sprinted towards the nearest cover, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy weapons fire. Colonel Blackwood's voice roared over the din, rallying his forces, but Raymond could see they were badly outnumbered. This way, Crane called, gesturing towards a half-hidden entrance to the facility's lower levels. We can lose them in the tunnels. With no time to weigh his options, Raymond plunged after Crane into the darkness below. The sounds of battle faded behind them as they descended deeper into the labyrinthine complex. Cleo's suit glowed brighter, illuminating their path through rusted catwalks and abandoned mining equipment. Cleo, can you sense where they are? Raymond asked, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The child's brow furrowed in concentration. They're splitting up. Some are following us, but most are fighting Colonel Blackwood's team. Crane stumbled along beside them, his face slick with sweat. We can't let Ven get his hands on her. He has a device, something that can amplify and control her abilities. If he succeeds... Raymond's mind reeled at the implications. They rounded a corner and found themselves in a vast chamber filled with dormant machinery. Suddenly, Cleo gasped, her eyes wide. Daddy, the machines, I can feel them. Before Raymond could respond, the chamber sprang to life. Conveyor belts groaned into motion. Massive drills began to spin, and robotic arms swung wildly through the air. The cacophony was deafening, and Raymond could only hope it would slow down their pursuers. But as they pressed on, he noticed Cleo growing pale, her movements becoming sluggish. The strain of interfacing with so much unfamiliar technology was clearly taking its toll. We need to find a place to rest, Raymond said, his voice tight with worry. She can't keep this up. Crane nodded, gesturing towards a sealed doorway. There should be a control room through there. We can barricade ourselves and give her a chance to recover. As they worked to force the door open, a distant rumble shook the facility. Raymond's comm unit crackled to life, Admiral Thornton's voice barely audible through the static. Raymond, do you copy? That object we detected. It's entered the atmosphere. We're experiencing massive EM disruptions. Communications are failing across the board. You're on your own for now. Stay alive and protect Cleo at all costs. The transmission cut out, leaving them in eerie silence. Raymond looked down at Cleo, her face drawn with exhaustion, then at Crane, his eyes wild with fear. Beyond the sealed door lay temporary safety, but also the agonizing wait for Ven's forces to close in. With a deep breath, Raymond made his choice. Help me with this door, he said to Crane. We're going to make our stand here. As they worked to secure their makeshift fortress, the distant sound of boots on metal echoed through the tunnels. Raymond cradled Cleo close, his mind racing as he prepared for the confrontation that would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of two species. The true test of his perseverance as a father, and as a protector of humanity's future, was about to begin. As Raymond braced himself for the impending confrontation, the facility's emergency lights flickered and died, plunging them into total darkness. The sudden silence was eerie, broken only by the sound of their rapid breathing. "Daddy," Cleo's voice wavered in the blackness. "I'm here, sweetheart," Raymond assured her, tightening his grip on her hand. "Stay close." Crane fumbled in his pocket, producing a small light stick. Its pale green glow cast long shadows across the control room, revealing their tense faces. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the complex. Dust and small debris rained down from the ceiling as the tremors intensified. Raymond instinctively shielded Cleo with his body as a loud crack echoed through the chamber. "We need to move," Crane shouted over the rumbling. "This section could collapse any minute." They stumbled towards the exit, the unstable floor threatening to trip them with every step. As they reached the corridor, a deafening boom reverberated through the facility, followed by an unnatural silence. Emergency backup systems sputtered to life, bathing the tunnels in a dim, pulsating red glow. Raymond's comm unit crackled, Admiral Thornton's voice barely audible through the static. "Massive EM disruptions. Communications failing. Protect Cleo." The transmission cut out, leaving them in relative silence once more. Raymond looked down at Cleo, noticing her pale face and unfocused eyes. "Cleo, what's wrong?" She blinked, her mismatched eyes refocusing on him. I feel something, Daddy. Something big. It's calling to me." Before Raymond could respond, the sound of boots on metal echoed through the tunnels. Crane's eyes widened in fear. "It's Ven's team. They're sweeping the facility. We need to find another way out." They hurried down the corridor, the malfunctioning machinery around them whirring to life unpredictably. Conveyor belts lurched into motion, carrying piles of rusty debris. Robotic arms swung wildly, forcing the group to duck and weave as they ran. As they rounded a corner, they collided with a group of disheveled men in mining gear. The lead miner, a gruff-looking man with a salt and pepper beard, raised a makeshift weapon defensively. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. Raymond raised his hands placatingly. "We're not here to hurt you. I'm Raymond. This is my daughter Cleo, and that's Victor. We're trying to escape the facility." The miner's eyes narrowed, then softened as he glanced at Cleo. "Mike Donovan," he introduced himself. "We were working the lower levels when all hell broke loose. Been trying to find a way out ever since." A distant explosion rocked the tunnel, sending another shower of dust cascading down. Donovan grimaced. "Look, I don't know what's going on up there, but we've got an old emergency exit shaft not far from here. It's our best shot at getting to the surface." Raymond nodded gratefully. "Lead the way." As the expanded group moved through the tunnels, Crane pulled Raymond aside. "I've got an idea," he whispered. "There's an old communication system back in the control room. If I can get it working, maybe I can contact Blackwood's team." Raymond hesitated, studying the man who had once been his enemy. "It's too dangerous to go alone." Crane's expression hardened with drive. "It's the least I can do. I'll try to draw Ven's forces away from you and Cleo. Get her to safety." Before Raymond could argue further, Crane turned and disappeared into the gloom. Raymond watched him go, a mix of gratitude and unease settling in his chest. The remaining group pressed on, guided by Donovan's knowledge of the facility. They navigated through a maze of tunnels, dodging malfunctioning equipment and unstable sections of the mine. Cleo grew increasingly agitated as they progressed, her eyes darting around as if tracking invisible movements. "What is it, sweetheart?" Raymond asked, concerned. "The big thing in the sky," Cleo whispered. It's like me, Daddy, but bigger, older." Raymond's mind raced, piecing together the implications of her words. Could Cleo's biological parents have connections to advanced Arcturian technology? It would explain the extraordinary nature of her abilities. Donovan led them to a junction in the tunnels, pointing to a narrow passage. "The emergency exit is through there, but I've got to warn you, it's in a highly unstable area. We'll need to move fast and quiet." As they entered the passage, the facility shook violently once more. The sound of grinding metal filled the air as the tunnel behind them began to collapse. "Run!" Donovan shouted. They sprinted through the unstable passage, leaping over fallen debris and ducking under precariously hanging support beams. The roar of the collapsing tunnel chased them, growing louder with each passing second. Just as it seemed the cave-in would overtake them, they burst into a larger chamber. Donovan pointed to a rusted ladder leading up to a heavy hatch in the ceiling. "There, that's our way out." As they rushed towards the ladder, a blinding flash of light filled the chamber. For a moment, all electronic systems in the facility went dead, plunging them into absolute darkness. In the sudden silence, Cleo's voice rang out clear and strong, filled with a mixture of wonder and fear. "Daddy, they're here. They've come for me." Raymond pulled her close, his heart pounding. "Who's here, Cleo?" Her reply sent a chill down his spine. "The children of two worlds." As emergency lights slowly flickered back to life, Raymond found himself facing an impossible choice. The way to the surface lay just above them, offering a chance at escape. But the arrival of this mysterious force, possibly linked to Cleo's origins, presented an unknown threat or opportunity. With Ven's forces no doubt regrouping and the facility crumbling around them, Raymond knew their next move would be critical. He looked at the miners, then down at Cleo, her mismatched eyes wide with anticipation. The faint sound of approaching footsteps echoed from one of the tunnels. Time was running out. Raymond took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever came next. Raymond's mind raced, weighing their options as the facility trembled around them. "We need to move," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Donovan, how stable is that exit shaft?" The miner's face was grim. "After that pulse? I wouldn't bet on it holding up much longer." As if to emphasize his point, a deep groan echoed through the chamber, followed by a shower of debris from the ceiling. Cleo whimpered, pressing closer to Raymond. "All right, everyone stay close," Raymond ordered, scooping Cleo into his arms. "We're going up." They had barely taken 3 steps when a violent tremor shook the facility. The emergency lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness once more. In the pitch black, the sound of crumbling concrete and twisting metal was deafening. "Cleo," Raymond whispered urgently, "can you help us see?" The child nodded against his chest, her mismatched eyes glowing faintly. A soft blue light emanated from her suit, illuminating their immediate surroundings. The scene it revealed was dire. The tunnel leading to the exit shaft had partially collapsed. Donovan cursed under his breath. "That way's no good now. We'll never clear it in time." Raymond's heart sank, but he forced himself to remain calm for Cleo's sake. "There has to be another way out. Donovan, any other escape routes you know of?" The miner shook his head, his expression grim. "Nothing nearby that I'd trust. This section's too unstable." As the group debated their next move, Cleo suddenly stiffened in Raymond's arms. Her eyes widened, focused on something beyond the rubble-strewn chamber. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder, "I can feel something. It's calling to me." Raymond followed her gaze, noticing for the first time a faint shimmer in the air near one of the chamber walls. As they watched, the shimmer coalesced into a barely visible outline of what appeared to be a doorway. "What in the world?" Donovan muttered, squinting at the phenomenon. Cleo squirmed in Raymond's arms, eager to investigate. "It's okay, Daddy. It wants to help us." Against his better judgment, Raymond approached the shimmering outline. As they drew closer, the air seemed to ripple, and suddenly they were facing a previously hidden passage. The tunnel beyond was unlike anything they'd seen in the mining facility. Smooth, almost organic-looking walls pulsed with a soft, bluish light. "Arcturian technology," Raymond breathed, recognizing the alien architecture from his briefings. Donovan and his miners exchanged uneasy glances. "You sure about this, Raymond?" Donovan asked, eyeing the passage warily. Another tremor shook the chamber, dislodging a large chunk of ceiling that crashed down mere feet from where they stood. The decision was made for them. "It's our only chance," Raymond said, stepping into the hidden tunnel. "Come on." The group hurried into the passage, the shimmering doorway sealing behind them as the last miner crossed the threshold. The difference was immediate. The oppressive heat and dust of the mining facility gave way to cool, clean air. They pressed forward, the tunnel's bioluminescent walls guiding their way. Cleo's eyes darted back and forth, drinking in every detail of their surroundings. Her small hand reached out, brushing against the smooth surface. "It's alive!" she whispered in awe. "The whole place is alive, Daddy." Raymond nodded, equally amazed. "Can you tell where it's leading us, sweetheart?" Cleo's brow furrowed in concentration. "Up," she said after a moment. "It wants to take us up." As they continued their descent into the heart of the Arcturian structure, Raymond couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The walls seemed to pulse in time with their footsteps, as if the very passage was aware of their presence. Suddenly, the tunnel opened up into a vast, circular chamber. The group gasped in unison as they took in the sight. Holographic displays flickered to life around them, filling the air with swirling star maps and streams of alien data. "My God!" Donovan breathed, his earlier skepticism forgotten in the face of such wonder. Raymond's attention was drawn to a series of symbols etched into a central console. With a jolt, he realized they matched the unique markings on Cleo's skin, the same markings that had puzzled Doctor since her birth. Before he could point this out to Cleo, the chamber shuddered. A low hum filled the air, building in intensity until it was almost painful. Cleo cried out, clutching her head, "Daddy, something's happening." A brilliant beam of energy shot upward from the center of the chamber, piercing through the rock above them. As the light faded, a holographic figure materialized in front of them, a tall, ethereal being with elongated features and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. "I am Zorax," the figure intoned, its voice resonating in their minds rather than their ears. "We have come for the child." Raymond instinctively tightened his grip on Cleo, his protective instincts flaring. "Who are you? What do you want with her?" Zorax's expression softened, if such a thing was possible for an alien visage. "We are the Guardians, the faction who oppose the experiments that led to her creation. We have come to protect her and to prevent her abilities from being exploited." Before Raymond could respond, the chamber shook violently. The sound of weapons fire echoed from the tunnel they had emerged from, growing closer with each passing second. "Ven," Raymond growled, recognizing the telltale sound of the doctor's energy weapons. Zorax's hologram flickered, its expression urgent. "You must choose quickly, Raymond-chun. Our vessel approaches, but Ven's forces draw near. The facility's structural integrity is failing. Will you trust us to ensure the child's safety?" Raymond looked down at Cleo, her mismatched eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. He thought of all they had been through, of the promise he had made to protect her. But he also knew that the threats they faced were beyond anything he could have imagined. The sound of boots on metal echoed through the chamber. Time was running out. Raymond took a deep breath, steeling himself for the decision that would shape not only their fate, but potentially the future of two species. "Cleo," he said softly, meeting her gaze, "what do you think we should do?" The child's response would set in motion a chain of events that would change the course of human-Arcturian relations forever. Cleo's eyes locked with Raymond's, a silent understanding passing between them. In that moment, Raymond knew what he had to do. "We trust you, Zorax," Raymond said, his voice firm despite the chaos around them. "But I won't leave my team behind. We need a way out for all of us." The holographic figure nodded solemnly. "Your loyalty is admirable, Raymond Chin. We shall assist in whatever way we can." Raymond turned to the group, his mind racing. "Donovan, take your team and start clearing that partially collapsed tunnel. It might be our best shot at reaching the surface." The miner nodded, immediately organizing his people to tackle the daunting task. As they set to work, Raymond focused on the alien console before him, its symbols pulsing with an otherworldly light. "Cleo," he said softly, "I need your help. Can you sense how to use this?" The child placed her small hands on the console, her mismatched eyes glowing faintly. The chamber hummed in response, holographic displays shifting and rearranging themselves. I think so, Daddy," Cleo whispered, her brow furrowed in concentration. As Raymond and Cleo worked to establish communication with the approaching vessel, the sounds of conflict grew louder. Gunfire and explosions echoed through the tunnels, punctuated by the screech of energy weapons. "Then," Raymond growled, recognizing the distinctive sound. The chamber shuddered violently, ancient stone grinding against metal. A holographic warning flashed in the air, displaying the facility's rapidly deteriorating structural integrity. Suddenly, a new hologram materialized in the center of the room. The image of Zorax, clearer now, regarded them with a mixture of concern and urgency. "We have established a link," the Arcturian elder said, its voice resonating in their minds. "But time grows short. The vessel approaches. Yet so do your pursuers." Raymond quickly explained their dire situation, the words tumbling out in a rush. As he spoke, another tremor shook the chamber, more violent than before. Dust and small debris rained down from the ceiling. Zorax's expression grew grave. "We can extract the child immediately, but our technology is incompatible with standard human physiology. The process would be fatal for you and your companions." Raymond's heart sank, but he refused to waver. "Then we find another way. I won't leave Cleo alone." Before Zorax could respond, a massive surge of energy rippled through the chamber. The holographic displays flickered wildly, and Cleo cried out in pain, clutching her head. "Daddy, something's wrong," she whimpered. Raymond held her close, his mind racing. "Zorax, what's happening?" The Arcturian's image wavered, its voice strained. "A powerful energy source has been activated nearby. It appears to be attempting to interface with the child's unique abilities. The resonance is destabilizing our systems and the surrounding structure." Realization dawned on Raymond. Ven's device. He's trying to control Cleo's powers. The chamber groaned ominously, cracks spreading across the walls. Raymond made a split-second decision. "Donovan," he shouted over the din, "get your people out through that tunnel. Now." The miner hesitated for a moment, then nodded grimly. He and his team redoubled their efforts, clearing a path through the debris. Raymond turned back to Zorax, his eyes hardened. "We need options. There has to be a way for me to stay with Cleo." The Arcturian was silent for a moment, its alien features unreadable. Then it spoke. "There may be one possibility. Our vessel carries a prototype bioadaptive suit designed for deep space exploration. In theory, it could allow you to survive the teleportation process. However, it has never been tested on human physiology. The risk is significant. Raymond didn't hesitate. I'll take that risk. For Cleo. As Zorax began remotely configuring the suit, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. Victor Crane stumbled into the chamber, bloodied but alive. "Raymond," he called out, leaning heavily against the wall. "I bought you some time. Sabotage Ven's main power systems. But they're not far behind." Raymond nodded gratefully. "Victor, go with Donovan. Get to the surface." Crane shook his head, his eyes steely with tenacity. "No, I'll hold them off. Give you and the girl a chance." Before Raymond could argue, the chamber shook violently. Support beams groaned and snapped, raining debris down around them. Zorax's voice cut through the din. "The suit is ready, but our window is closing rapidly. You must decide now, Raymond-chun." Raymond looked at Cleo, her small face etched with fear and trust. He made his choice. "Do it," he said firmly. The air around Raymond shimmered, and suddenly he felt the bioadaptive suit materializing around him. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced, the material seeming to meld with his very skin. He gasped as he felt it interfacing with his nervous system. Cleo's eyes widened in wonder. "Daddy, you're glowing." Raymond managed a smile, trying to hide his own apprehension. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're going on a little trip." The sound of weapons fire grew closer. Victor Crane hefted his rifle, moving towards the chamber entrance. "Go!" he shouted. "I'll hold them as long as I can." Raymond nodded gratefully, then turned to Zorax. "We're ready." The Arturian's image flickered one last time. "Prepare yourselves. The process will be intense." As the teleportation field began to envelop them, Raymond held Cleo tightly. He caught a final glimpse of Victor Crane engaging Ven's forces, buying them precious seconds. The world around them dissolved into pure energy. Raymond felt as if every atom of his being was being pulled apart and reassembled. He clung to Cleo, focusing on her presence as reality itself seemed to warp and twist. In a blinding flash, the ancient chamber vanished. As consciousness faded, Raymond's last thought was of Cleo and the uncertain future that awaited them among the stars. Stars. The sensation of being pulled apart and reassembled faded, replaced by a dizzying disorientation as Raymond's vision cleared. He blinked rapidly, adjusting to the sudden change in surroundings. Gone was the ancient chamber with its crumbling walls and swirling dust. Instead, he found himself standing in a sleek, metallic room bathed in soft blue light. Cleo's small hand tightened in his, and he looked down to see her staring wide-eyed at their new environment. Unlike Raymond, she seemed completely unfazed by the teleportation process. "Daddy, look," she whispered, pointing at the curved wall behind them. Raymond turned and gasped. A massive viewport revealed the curvature of Earth below, a breathtaking blue and white sphere suspended in the vast blackness of space. They were aboard the Arturian vessel, high above the planet's atmosphere. A strange tingling sensation spread across Raymond's skin, and he realized the bioadaptive suit was reconfiguring itself. The material rippled and shifted, adjusting to the ship's environment. He marveled at the advanced technology, unlike anything he had ever encountered. "Welcome aboard the Nexus." A melodious voice resonated in their minds. Raymond turned to see Zorax approaching them. In person, the Arturian elder was even more striking than the hologram had suggested. Tall and slender, with iridescent skin that seemed to shimmer with every movement, Zorax possessed multiple sets of eyes that regarded them with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "I am pleased to see you both made the journey safely," Zorax continued. "However, it seems the teleportation process has taken a toll on you Raymond Chin. As if on cue, a wave of dizziness washed over Raymond. He staggered, his vision blurring at the edges. Cleo cried out in alarm as he sank to one knee, struggling to maintain his balance. "Daddy!" she exclaimed, her small hands gripping his arm. A team of Arcturians rushed forward, led by a female with distinctive markings on her elongated cranium. She knelt beside Raymond, producing a device that emitted a soft, pulsing light. "I am Dr. Zelena," she said, her voice carrying a lilting accent. "Please remain still while I stabilize your biochemistry. The experimental nature of the teleportation process has caused some cellular disruption." Raymond nodded weakly, focusing on his breathing as Dr. Zelena worked. The device in her hand hummed softly, and gradually, the disorientation began to subside. As his vision cleared, he became aware of a commotion behind the medical team. Holographic displays throughout the room had suddenly sprung to life, filling the air with a dizzying array of star charts and streams of data. The Arcturian crew members were reacting with surprise, their multiple eyes darting from screen to screen. "Fascinating," Zorax murmured, stepping closer to examine the displays. "It appears young Cleo's abilities are interacting with our systems in unexpected ways." Raymond struggled to his feet, steadied by Dr. Zelena. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Before Zorax could answer, a new voice cut through the chaos. "Elder Zorax, we have an urgent situation." A stern-looking Arcturian strode into the room, his posture radiating authority. The insignia on his uniform marked him as a high-ranking officer. "Captain Thrax," Zorax acknowledged. "What is the matter?" "Our sensors have detected multiple vessels on an intercept course," Thrax reported, his tone grave. "Scans indicate a mix of human and Arcturian ships. It appears both Earth's governments and our own authorities are in pursuit." Raymond's heart sank. He had hoped their escape would buy them more time, but it seemed their adversaries were not far behind. "We've also received a transmission from Earth," Thrax continued. "It's from a human named Colonel Blackwood. He claims to have escaped the mining facility, with a small group of survivors, including one Victor Crane." A surge of relief washed over Raymond at the news of Victor's survival, but it was short-lived. "There's more," Thrax said, his multiple eyes focusing on Raymond. "The message warns that Dr. Elias Venn also survived. He has convinced both human and Arcturian officials that you, Raymond Chun, have kidnapped the child. You are being painted as a dangerous fugitive." The weight of the situation settled heavily on Raymond's shoulders. He looked down at Cleo, who gazed back at him with trust and confusion in her mismatched eyes. Zorax stepped forward, his expression solemn. "Raymond Chun, we find ourselves at a crossroads. I offer you and Cleo asylum aboard the Nexus. We can take you to a distant Arcturian colony, where you would be safe from those who seek to exploit the child's abilities." Raymond's mind raced, considering the implications. Safety for Cleo, but at the cost of leaving Earth behind, perhaps never clearing his name or seeing his home again. "Alternatively," Zorax continued, "we can return to Earth, where you can face these accusations directly. However, this path carries great risk for both you and Cleo." Before Raymond could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The holographic displays flickered wildly, and Cleo cried out, clutching her head in pain. "Daddy," she whimpered, "something's hurting me." Dr. Zelena rushed to scan Cleo with her device, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "I'm detecting a massive energy surge from Earth's surface," she reported. "It appears to be interfering with the child's neural patterns." Zorax's eyes widened in realization. Ven's device. He must have found a way to amplify its effects, attempting to control Cleo's abilities at a distance. The ship lurched suddenly, sending crew members stumbling. Gravity seemed to fluctuate, objects floating momentarily before crashing back down. Cleo's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light as her powers spiraled out of control, unconsciously interfacing with the Nexus' systems. "Captain," a crew member shouted, "we're losing control of vital systems. Engine power is fluctuating. Life support is unstable." Captain Thrax turned to Zorax, his voice urgent. "Elder, we must take immediate action to prevent a catastrophic failure." Raymond knelt beside Cleo, wrapping his arms around her trembling form. "It's okay, sweetheart," he soothed, drawing on years of experience, calming her during nightmares and moments of stress. "Focus on my voice. You're safe here with me." As Raymond worked to help Cleo regain control, Zorax approached with a grim expression. "There may be a solution," the Elder said. "The Nexus possesses an experimental shielding technology that could potentially block the effects of Ven's device. However, deploying it would require diverting power from our engines, leaving us vulnerable to the approaching vessels." The pursuing ships closed in, their signatures blinking ominously on the few displays still functioning. Cleo struggled in Raymond's arms, her powers fluctuating wildly. The crew of the Nexus looked to Raymond, awaiting his decision. In that moment, with alarms blaring and the ship shuddering around them, Raymond knew he faced a choice that would shape not only their immediate future, but potentially the course of human-Arcturian relations. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the decision that lay ahead. Ahead, with Cleo's safety and the fate of the Nexus hanging in the balance, Raymond made his decision. "Zorax, deploy the shield," he said firmly. "We need to protect Cleo first." The Arcturian Elder nodded, his iridescent skin shimmering as he turned to Captain Thrax. "Divert power from the engines. Activate the experimental shielding." The captain's multiple eyes blinked in rapid succession as he processed the order. "Understood. Initiating shield deployment now." A low hum filled the air as the Nexus' systems redirected energy. The ship lurched, its forward momentum slowing dramatically. Raymond held Cleo close, feeling her trembling subside as a translucent, shimmering barrier enveloped the vessel. Dr. Zelena monitored her instruments closely. "The shield is functioning as intended. Ven's signal is being blocked." Cleo's eyes gradually returned to their normal state, the otherworldly glow fading. She looked up at Raymond, confusion and relief mingling on her small face. "Daddy, it stopped hurting." Raymond smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "You're safe now, sweetheart." The immediate crisis averted, Raymond turned to address the looming threat of the approaching ships. An idea began to form in his mind, a risky gambit that could potentially determine the situation without further conflict. "Zorax," he said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Your communication systems, how powerful are they?" The Arcturian Elder tilted his head, curiosity evident in his multifaceted eyes. "They are capable of transmitting across vast interstellar distances." "Why do you ask?" Raymond's gaze swept across the bridge, taking in the advanced technology surrounding them. "We need to tell the truth, to everyone, about Cleo, about Ven's experiments, all of it." Captain Thrax stepped forward, his posture tense. "You propose broadcasting sensitive information to our pursuers? That is highly irregular." "It's our best chance," Raymond insisted. "If we can make both the human and Arcturian fleets understand what's really happening, we might be able to end this peacefully." Zorax considered for a moment, then nodded. "A bold strategy, but one with merit. Dr. Zelena, assist Raymond in compiling the necessary data. Captain, prepare our communication arrays for a wide-spectrum broadcast." The next few minutes were a flurry of activity. Raymond worked alongside Dr. Zelena and the ship's AI, Synapse, to assemble a comprehensive data package. They included evidence of Ven's illegal experiments, documentation of Raymond's legal adoption of Cleo, and the groundbreaking data from the ancient Arcturian chamber. As they worked, The pursuing fleet drew closer. Holographic displays showed a mix of human and Arcturian vessels surrounding the Nexus, weapons primed but holding fire. "Broadcast ready," Captain Thrax announced. "We are being hailed by the lead vessels." Raymond took a deep breath, squeezing Cleo's hand for reassurance. "Open a channel to both fleet commanders." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing two stern faces. On one side was Admiral Jax Thornton, his weathered features set in a frown. Raymond recognized him from their brief encounter on the lunar base. On the other was an Arcturian with elaborate cranial markings. High Counselor Zorn, Raymond assumed. "This is Raymond Chin aboard the Arcturian vessel Nexus," he began, his voice steady. "I know you've been led to believe I've kidnapped this child, but I assure you that's not the case. We're about to transmit data that will explain everything. I ask that you review it before taking any aggressive action." Admiral Thornton's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Chun, you're in a lot of trouble. Why should we trust anything you send us?" "Because the stakes are too high not to," Raymond replied. "This information affects both our species. Please, just look at the data." High Counselor Zorn spoke, his melodious voice tinged with skepticism. "We will evaluate your transmission, human. But be warned, any attempt at deception will be met with swift consequences." Raymond nodded. "Understood. Initiating data transfer now." With a gesture from Captain Thrax, the Nexus began broadcasting the compiled information to every ship in the vicinity. Tense minutes passed as they waited for a response. Cleo fidgeted nervously at Raymond's side, while the Arcturian crew maintained a state of high alert. Finally, Admiral Thornton's image reappeared on the interface. His expression had shifted from stern to troubled. "Mr. Chun, this information. If it's accurate, it's explosive. I've ordered my fleet to stand down for now." High Counselor Zorn joined the transmission, his multiple eyes wide with shock. "The extent of Ven's activities. This goes beyond anything we anticipated. The implications for our society are staggering." A collective sigh of relief swept through the Nexus's bridge. But before they could fully relax, alarms began blaring once more. "Elder Zorax!" cried a young Arcturian at a nearby console. "Our sensors are detecting a massive electromagnetic disturbance in Earth's upper atmosphere." Dr. Zelena rushed to verify the readings, her expression growing grave. "It appears to be a result of the energy discharge from Ven's device. If left unchecked, it could disrupt global communications and damage orbital infrastructure." Raymond's mind raced, considering their options. He looked at Cleo, then at the advanced systems of the Nexus around them. An idea began to form, risky, but potentially their only chance. "Zorax," he said, turning to the Arcturian elder, "is it possible to use the Nexus's systems, combined with Cleo's unique abilities, to dissipate this storm?" Zorax's eyes widened in surprise. "Theoretically, yes, but the strain on both the ship and the child would be significant." Before Raymond could respond, Admiral Thornton's voice cut in. "Chun, we're detecting the disturbance as well. Whatever you're planning, you'll have our full support. We can't let that storm wreak havoc on Earth." High Counselor Zorn nodded in agreement. "The Arcturian fleet stands ready to assist as well. This threat transcends our previous conflicts." As the impromptu alliance began coordinating their efforts, a new alert sounded on the Nexus's bridge. Captain Thrax's voice was tense as he reported. "We're detecting unusual activity from a network of previously dormant satellites in Earth orbit. They appear to be attempting to interface with the electromagnetic disturbance." Raymond's blood ran cold as he realized the implications. It's Ven. He must have had a backup plan. The situation had become even more complex. As Raymond and the crew of the Nexus prepared to confront the dual threats of the atmospheric disturbance and Ven's machinations, the weight of responsibility settled heavily upon them. The next few hours would determine not only their fate, but potentially the future of human-Arcturian relations and the safety of Earth itself. Raymond knelt beside Cleo, looking into her eyes. "Sweetie, I need your help. It's going to be hard, but I'll be right here with you. Are you ready?" Cleo nodded, her mismatched eyes filled with a willpower that belied her young age. "I'm ready, Daddy." As they turned to face the challenges ahead, Raymond couldn't help but marvel at the strange turns his life had taken. From a simple engineer to the center of an interstellar crisis, all because of his love for this extraordinary child. Whatever came next, he knew they would face it together. Together, a renewed sense of purpose filled Raymond as he turned to address the crew of the Nexus. "Let's get to work," he said, his voice filled with quiet tenacity. Captain Thrax's multiple eyes blinked in rapid succession as he processed the incoming data. Initiating maneuvers to position the Nexus for optimal engagement with the electromagnetic storm, he announced, his tentacles dancing across the ship's controls. The view outside the bridge's expansive windows shifted as the Nexus glided into position. Earth loomed large before them, its familiar blue-green sphere now marred by swirling patterns of angry red and purple, visible manifestations of the growing electromagnetic disturbance. Admiral Thornton's gruff voice came through the communication channel. "Chin, we're deploying our forces to protect key orbital infrastructure. What's your plan?" Raymond glanced at Dr. Zelena, who nodded in confirmation. "We're going to use the Nexus's energy projection arrays in conjunction with Cleo's abilities to counteract the storm. But we'll need your help to deal with another problem." He quickly explained the situation with Ven's satellite network. High Counselor Zorn's melodious voice joined the conversation. "We have detected these anomalous devices. Our technicians stand ready to assist in identifying the true threats among the decoys." "Good," Raymond replied, "because we're going to need every advantage we can get." As the Allied forces coordinated their efforts, Raymond worked alongside Dr. Zelena and Synapse to prepare Cleo for her crucial role. They fitted her with a specially designed neural interface, its bioadaptive circuitry pulsing with a soft blue light. "How does it feel, sweetheart?" Raymond asked, kneeling beside Cleo's chair. Cleo's mismatched eyes widened as she adjusted to the sensation. "It's tingly," she said, "like when my foot falls asleep, but all over." Dr. Zelena's elegant fingers danced across a holographic display, making final adjustments. The interface is designed to allow Cleo to safely channel her abilities through the ship's systems without risking overexertion, she explained. A violent shudder ran through the ship, nearly knocking Raymond off his feet. Captain Thrax's voice rang out. "The storm's intensity is increasing. We must act now." Raymond squeezed Cleo's hand. "Ready." She nodded, her small face set with a dedication that belied her years. Initiating interface, Dr. Zelena called out. Cleo gasped as the connection was established. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and the ship's energy projection arrays hummed to life. Streams of iridescent energy flowed from the Nexus, reaching out to touch the roiling electromagnetic storm. Outside, the battle was already underway. Human fighters, their hulls gleaming with EMP-hardened shielding, wove intricate patterns through the debris field of Earth orbit. Arcturian vessels provided support, their advanced scanners piercing through Ven's smokescreen of decoys. "We've located the first cluster of active satellites," Admiral Thornton reported. "Moving to neutralize." As Raymond watched the displays, tracking the progress of their allies, a new alert blared through the bridge. Synapse's calm voice belied the urgency of the situation. "Warning. Extreme power fluctuations detected in Dr. Ven's satellite network. Energy signature matches previous attempts to interface with Cleo's neural patterns." Raymond's blood ran cold. He's trying to take control again, he realized aloud. Cleo cried out, her small body tensing as she fought against the invasive signal. The ship's systems flickered, and for a heart-stopping moment, their connection to the storm wavered. "Cleo!" Raymond called out, reaching for her. But Dr. Zelena held him back. "Wait," she said, her eyes fixed on her instruments. "If we break the connection now, we risk losing control entirely." Raymond watched helplessly as Cleo struggled, her face contorted with effort. The electromagnetic storm outside intensified, massive auroras painting the sky in eerie, beautiful patterns. Captain Thrax's voice cut through the tension. "Our shields are at maximum, but they cannot withstand this level of strain indefinitely." In that moment, Raymond made a decision. He grabbed the bioadaptive suit he had worn during their earlier teleportation, quickly pulling it on. "What are you doing?" Dr. Zelena asked, alarm evident in her voice. "Linking myself into the system," Raymond replied, his fingers flying over the suit's control panel. "If I can share the load with Cleo, maybe we can push back against Ven's interference." Before anyone could object, Raymond activated the suit's neural interface. The world around him seemed to blur and shift as his consciousness expanded, merging with the ship's systems and, more importantly, with Cleo's awareness. He found himself in a realm of pure energy and information. Cleo's presence blazed like a small sun, her fear and tenacity palpable. Raymond reached out, wrapping his essence around hers protectively. "I've got you, sweetheart," he projected, feeling her relief wash over him. Together, they turned their combined will against the chaotic maelstrom of the electromagnetic storm. Raymond could feel the strain on Cleo lessen as he took on part of the burden. Slowly but surely, they began to make progress. Outside in the physical world, the effects were immediately apparent. The Nexus's energy projection stabilized, pushing back against the storm with renewed vigor. The ship systems, previously on the verge of overload, found a new equilibrium. "It's working," Dr. Zelena exclaimed. Her eyes darting between her instruments and the spectacular light showed visible through the bridge windows. As Raymond and Cleo worked in concert with the Nexus's advanced technology, the electromagnetic disturbance began to dissipate. The angry reds and purples in Earth's atmosphere gradually faded, giving way to more natural hues. But their ordeal was a long way to go. Even as they made progress against the storm, Raymond could sense a new threat looming on the horizon, a massive surge of energy approaching from the sun. In the shared mental space he occupied with Cleo, Raymond felt a flicker of recognition from the child. Somehow, she had sensed the impending solar flare before their instruments had detected it. As they braced for this new challenge, Raymond knew that their ultimate test was yet to come. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, dependent on the combined efforts of humans, Arturians, and one extraordinary little girl. As Raymond and Cleo braced themselves against the approaching solar flare, a new sense of urgency filled the Nexus's bridge. Captain Thrax's tentacles flew across the control panels. "Deploying experimental solar shield," he announced, his voice tight with tension. A shimmering barrier of energy unfurled from the Nexus, expanding outward like a translucent umbrella. Designed for deep space missions, it now stood as Earth's primary defense against the impending solar onslaught. Admiral Thornton's gruff voice crackled through the comm system. "Chen, we've neutralized most of Ven's satellites, regrouping to form a defensive perimeter around your position." Raymond watched as the human fighters took up formation around the Nexus, their hulls gleaming in the eerie light of the dissipating electromagnetic storm. High Counselor Zorn's melodious tones followed, Arturian vessels moving to reinforce weak points in the solar shield. "Our energy projection systems are at your disposal." The view outside the bridge windows shifted as the Allied fleet maneuvered into position. Earth hung below them, its familiar blues and greens now overshadowed by the approaching wall of solar radiation. In the shared mental space Raymond occupied with Cleo, he felt a surge of willpower from his daughter. Together, they pushed against the electromagnetic disturbances, working in harmony with the Nexus's systems to stabilize Earth's field. Suddenly, the first waves of the solar flare struck. The ship shuddered violently, and alarms blared across the bridge. The solar shield flickered but held, its energy patterns rippling under the assault. Shield integrity at 87% and falling, Captain Thrax reported, his multiple eyes blinking rapidly. Main systems experiencing severe strain. We cannot maintain this level of protection indefinitely. Raymond felt Cleo's fear spike through their connection. He wrapped his consciousness around hers, offering comfort and support. As they worked together, channeling their combined will through the ship's systems, Raymond experienced a moment of startling clarity. "Wait," he said aloud, his physical voice hoarse from disuse. "We're approaching this all wrong. We shouldn't just be defending against the flare. We should be using it." Dr. Zelena looked up from her console, her elegant features creased with concern. "What do you mean, Raymond?" Raymond's mind raced, the idea taking shape even as he spoke. Cleo can interface with both human and Arturian tech. What if we reconfigured the Nexus's energy collectors to absorb and redirect the flare's power instead of just blocking it? Captain Thrax's tentacles paused over the controls. It's theoretically possible, but the risk of overload would be extreme. "It's our best shot," Raymond insisted. "We're running out of options." As the Nexus's crew scrambled to implement Raymond's plan, alarms blared with renewed urgency. Dr. Zelena's eyes widened as she studied the incoming data. "We're detecting a powerful signal from the remaining active satellites in Ven's network. It's interfering with our reconfiguration efforts." Raymond felt Cleo cry out in their shared mental space, pain lancing through their connection. The interfering signal was affecting her ability to interface with the ship systems. "Cleo, hold on," Raymond called out, both mentally and aloud. He redoubled his efforts, shielding her consciousness as best he could while maintaining their vital link to the Nexus. Outside, the combined fleets of Admiral Thornton and High Counselor Zorn tightened their formation around the Nexus. Energy beams lanced out from the Allied ships, lending their power to reinforce the failing shield. The solar flare reached its peak intensity, bathing Earth in a sea of charged particles. Massive auroras painted the planet's atmosphere in breathtaking swirls of color, visible even from the Nexus's position in high orbit. But beneath the beauty lay danger. Power grids flickered and communication systems faltered across the globe. Inside the ship, Raymond and Cleo fought to maintain their connection as the Nexus's newly reconfigured energy collectors engaged. Streams of solar radiation poured into the ship's systems, pushing them to their limits and beyond. "Power levels critical," Captain Thrax shouted over the din of alarms. "We're absorbing more energy than our systems were ever designed to handle." Raymond felt the strain through his link with Cleo and the ship. It was like trying to contain an ocean in a teacup, the raw power of the sun threatening to overwhelm them at any moment. Just when it seemed they would be consumed by the solar fury, a change rippled through the system. The interfering signal from Ven's satellites abruptly cut out. In that instant, Cleo's connection with the Nexus crystallized into perfect clarity. Raymond felt it too, a seamless integration of human intuition, Arturian technology, and Cleo's unique hybrid abilities. The ship's energy collectors reached peak efficiency, drinking in the solar flare's power and channeling it with otherworldly precision. The view outside the bridge windows transformed into a dazzling light show as excess energy arced between the Nexus and the surrounding fleet. As the immediate threat of the solar flare began to subside, Raymond allowed himself a moment of relief. But Captain Thrax's urgent voice quickly shattered any sense of triumph. "The danger isn't over," the Arturian captain warned. "Our systems are now containing an unprecedented amount of energy, far beyond anything they were designed for. If we can't safely discharge this excess power, we risk a catastrophic overload." Raymond's mind raced, considering and discarding options. Then, through his connection with Cleo, he glimpsed a solution. He saw Earth below them, its electromagnetic field still reeling from the recent disturbances, its power grid struggling to recover. "We can use the excess energy," Raymond said, his voice filled with renewed purpose. "We can repair the damage to Earth systems, fix the electromagnetic field, restore power to affected areas." Dr. Zelena's fingers flew over her console as she ran simulations. "It's possible, but it would require maintaining your connection to our overcharged systems for an extended period. The risk to you and Cleo would be significant." Raymond met Cleo's eyes across the bridge, feeling her grip match his own. They had come too far to back down now. "We're ready," Raymond said, speaking for both of them. As the Nexus and its allies prepared for this delicate operation, Raymond and Cleo steeled themselves for the challenge ahead. The fate of millions hung in the balance, depending on their ability to channel the awesome power they had captured. Through their shared mental link, Raymond sent a wave of love and reassurance to his adopted daughter. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Together. As Raymond and Cleo braced for the challenge ahead, the Nexus hummed with barely held back power. "Initiating energy discharge," Captain Thrax announced, his tentacles dancing across the control panel. Raymond felt the surge of energy through his connection with Cleo and the ship systems. It was like trying to direct a raging river with his bare hands. Beside him, Cleo's small form trembled with the effort, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The view outside the bridge windows transformed as tendrils of energy arced from the Nexus towards Earth. The planet's damaged electromagnetic field began to visibly stabilize, the chaotic swirls of disrupted particles gradually aligning into more natural patterns. But the strain on the ship was immense. Alarms blared as systems throughout the Nexus began to overload. "Power distribution network failing," Captain Thrax reported, his usual calm demeanor cracking under the pressure. "We're losing control of the energy flow." Dr. Zelena's fingers flew over her console, her face etched with concern. "Raymond, Cleo, your vitals are spiking dangerously. We need to abort." "No!" Raymond gritted out, his entire body rigid with the effort of maintaining the connection. "We're too close. We can do this." Through their shared mental link, he felt Cleo's purpose mirror his own. Together, they pushed harder, channeling more of the excess energy into Earth systems. Captain Thrax made a series of rapid clicks, an Arcturian expression of frustration. "Hull integrity compromised. We need to evacuate non-essential personnel immediately." As the captain issued evacuation orders, the ship shuddered violently. Raymond saw fractured spider webbing across the bridge windows, the vastness of space held at bay by rapidly failing force fields. Despite the chaos around them, Raymond and Cleo maintained their focus. On the monitors still functioning, they could see the effects of their efforts on Earth. Cities that had been plunged into darkness flickered back to life. The planet's electromagnetic field stabilized further, pushing back against the lingering effects of the solar flare. But it wasn't enough. The Nexus groaned under the strain, more alarms joining the cacophony. Raymond felt the ship systems failing one by one through his connection. They were running out of time. In that moment of crisis, Raymond made a decision. With a mental nudge to Cleo, he began redirecting the remaining energy surge into the ship's teleportation systems. Cleo, understanding his intent instantly, amplified the teleportation field. Her hybrid physiology allowed her to interface with both human and Arcturian technology in ways that shouldn't have been possible. "Everyone, brace for emergency teleportation," Raymond shouted. The world around them dissolved into blinding light. Raymond felt a wrenching sensation, as if his very atoms were being pulled apart and reassembled. The last thing he saw before the Nexus vanished was the ship breaking apart, silent explosions blossoming against the backdrop of space. The light faded, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves and the scent of damp earth. Raymond blinked, disoriented by the sudden transition from sterile ship to lush forest. Cleo lay beside him, unconscious but breathing steadily. As Raymond's senses adjusted, he realized something was different. The bioadaptive suit he wore had changed, seeming to meld with his skin in places. He could feel the force around him in a way that defied explanation, every electronic signal, every pulse of life. Cleo stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Raymond gasped as he saw her face. The ordeal had accelerated her hybrid physiology. Her skin now had a faint iridescent sheen, and her eyes held depths that seemed to reflect the vastness of space itself. "Dad!" Cleo's voice was uncertain, tinged with fear at the changes she could undoubtedly feel within herself. "I'm here, sweetheart," Raymond assured her, pulling her into a tight embrace. "We made it." As they held each other, Raymond's enhanced senses picked up something alarming. A group of people was moving through the forest, heading directly for their position. Their intentions were clear even at this distance. They were hunting. "Cleo," Raymond whispered urgently, "we need to move. There are people coming, and I don't think they're here to help us." Cleo nodded, her new abilities allowing her to sense the approaching threat as well. Together, they rose and began to make their way deeper into the forest, using their newfound connection to the environment to move silently through the underbrush. As they traveled, Raymond and Cleo worked in tandem, using their enhanced abilities to create natural barriers and diversions. They redirected small streams, encouraged vines to grow more densely, and even managed to influence the local wildlife to move in ways that would mask their trail. But their pursuers were skilled and determined. Despite Raymond and Cleo's efforts, the hunting party drew steadily closer. As they crested a small rise, Raymond caught sight of their attackers for the first time. They moved with military precision, their gear marking them as part of some specialized unit. "Project Chimera," Cleo whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of fear and anger. Raymond nodded grimly. He had suspected as much. These must be operatives sent to capture Cleo and any advanced technology she might have brought with her from the Nexus. They couldn't run forever. Raymond knew they would have to make a stand soon. He looked at Cleo, seeing the grit in her eyes that matched his own. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As the Project Chimera team closed in, Raymond and Cleo prepared for the confrontation. They found a defensible position, a small clearing bordered by a steep rock face on one side and a dense thicket on the other. Using their connection to the forest, they began to set up more elaborate traps and barriers. Raymond's mind raced, formulating strategies based on their new abilities and the resources at hand. He could hear the Chimera team's communication devices, could sense the energy signatures of their weapons. It gave them an advantage, but would it be enough? The forest fell silent as the Chimera operatives approached the clearing. Raymond and Cleo crouched behind a fallen log, their bodies tense, ready for action. The first operative stepped into view, weapon raised, scanning the area with cold precision. Raymond met Cleo's eyes one last time before the inevitable clash. No words were needed. They were in this together, their bond stronger than ever. As the rest of the Chimera team emerged from the forest, Raymond and Cleo prepared to fight for their freedom, their future, and perhaps the fate of two worlds. Worlds. As Raymond tensed for the inevitable confrontation, his enhanced senses suddenly kicked into overdrive. He could hear the heartbeats of the approaching operatives, smell the ozone from their energy weapons, even feel the vibrations of their footsteps through the forest floor. "Cleo," he whispered, "I have an idea." Without waiting for a response, Raymond began gathering fallen branches and leaves, his newfound strength allowing him to move with incredible speed and precision. In moments, he had constructed a series of makeshift barriers and diversions around their position. Cleo, catching on quickly, closed her eyes and focused. The air around them seemed to hum with invisible energy as she reached out with her mind, interfacing with the Chimera team's communications equipment. Static filled their earpieces, and their tracking devices went haywire. Commander Marcus Steele, leading the Chimera operatives, frowned as his cybernetic eye flickered with interference. "Spread out," he ordered, his voice low and controlled. "They're close." As the team advanced, Raymond guided Cleo deeper into the forest, using his heightened awareness to avoid detection. They moved silently, leaving false trails and misdirections in their wake. Suddenly, Raymond spotted a dilapidated structure through the trees. "There," he pointed, "an old ranger station. We can use it for cover." They sprinted towards the abandoned building, slipping inside just as Steele's team entered the clearing behind them. Raymond quickly assessed their surroundings, grabbing what useful items he could find: a rusty first aid kit, some rope, and a handful of flares. "Cleo, how are you holding up?" Raymond asked, his social worker instincts kicking in despite the dire situation. The young girl nodded, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "I'm okay, Dad, but I can feel them getting closer." Raymond squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "We're going to get through this. I need you to focus on disrupting their equipment as much as you can, okay?" As Cleo concentrated on her task, Raymond began fortifying their position. He used his enhanced strength to move heavy furniture, creating choke points and defensive positions throughout the small station. Outside, Steele activated a portable energy dampening field. The effect was immediate. Cleo gasped as her connection to the Chimera team's tech wavered. "They're trying to cut us off," she said, her voice strained. Raymond's mind raced, searching for a solution. His eyes fell on an old emergency radio in the corner. "Cleo, can you boost that radio signal? We need to get a message out." Working together, they managed to amplify the radio's output. Raymond quickly tapped out a coded message, hoping it would reach Colonel Blackwood's search teams before Steele could pinpoint their location. The forest fell silent as Steele's team surrounded the station. Raymond could sense their positions, feel the tension in the air. He placed himself between Cleo and the door, ready for whatever came next. Suddenly, a Chimera operative burst through a window. Raymond's bioadaptive suit reacted instinctively, hardening into a protective shell around him and Cleo. The attacker's eyes widened in surprise, giving Raymond the opening he needed. With lightning-fast reflexes, he subdued the intruder, using his newfound strength to incapacitate him without causing permanent harm. As Raymond secured the unconscious operative, the sky outside lit up. Debris from the destroyed Nexus streaked across the atmosphere, creating a dazzling but ominous light show. A massive impact shook the ground, nearly knocking them off their feet. Through the window, Raymond saw a large fragment of the Nexus embedded in the forest floor less than a kilometer away. Energy pulsed from the crash site, interfering with both Cleo's abilities and the Chimera team's equipment. "The core," Cleo whispered, her eyes wide. Part of the Nexus's energy core survived. Raymond understood immediately the importance of securing that technology. But as he looked outside, he saw that Steele and his team had come to the same realization. The Chimera operatives were already changing formation, preparing to make a run for the crash site. "We need to move," Raymond said, helping Cleo to her feet. "Stay close to me." They slipped out of the ranger station, using the chaos caused by the falling debris as cover. The forest had become a treacherous obstacle course, with fallen trees, unstable ground, and unpredictable energy discharges from the Nexus fragment. As they navigated the hazardous terrain, Raymond could hear Steele barking orders to his team. The Chimera operatives were spreading out, trying to flank them and cut off their route to the crash site. Cleo stumbled suddenly, her face contorted in pain. "Dad," she gasped. "Something's happening. The Nexus. I can feel it." Raymond caught her before she fell, concern etched on his face. Cleo's eyes had taken on an otherworldly glow, and her skin shimmered with an iridescent light. She was clearly processing a massive influx of information from the crashed Nexus fragment. Hold on, sweetheart, Raymond urged, scooping her up in his arms. We're almost there. He pushed forward, using every ounce of his enhanced strength and agility to navigate the treacherous forest. The crash site loomed ahead, the Nexus fragment pulsing with an eerie blue light. As Raymond burst into the clearing surrounding the crash site, he found himself face to face with Commander Steele and his team. The Chimera operatives had their weapons trained on him, while Steele stood calmly in the center, his cybernetic eye gleaming. "Hand over the girl and the Nexus tech," Steele demanded, his voice cold and calculating. "There's nowhere left to run." Raymond gently set Cleo down, positioning himself protectively in front of her. His bioadaptive suit hummed with energy, ready to respond to any threat. Behind them, the Nexus fragment pulsed with increasing intensity, its energy field growing stronger by the second. As Raymond stared down Steele and his team, he knew the next few moments would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of human-Arcturian relations. The force around them crackled with tension and residual energy from the Nexus debris, setting the stage for a confrontation that would change everything. Everything. Raymond took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the chaotic scene before him. The forest crackled with energy, the air thick with tension and the scent of ozone. He knew he had mere seconds to act. With a burst of adrenaline-fueled strength, Raymond sprang into action. He grabbed fallen trees and debris, his bioadaptive suit enhancing his already impressive strength. In a flurry of movement, he constructed a makeshift barrier around Cleo, shielding her from Steele's advancing forces. "Stay behind me," Raymond ordered, his voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. Commander Steele's cybernetic eye whirred as he assessed the rapidly changing battlefield. "Delta Team, secure the fragment. The rest of you with me," he barked, his voice cutting through the cacophony of energy discharges and splintering wood. The Chimera operatives moved with practiced precision, their weapons trained on Raymond and Cleo as they advanced. The other half of the team peeled off, making their way towards the pulsing Nexus fragment. Cleo stirred behind Raymond, her eyes fluttering open. The overwhelming influx of Arcturian knowledge was beginning to settle, and with it came a newfound awareness. She could feel the energy from the Nexus fragment, pulsing in time with her own heartbeat. "Dad," she whispered, her voice tinged with awe and fear. "I can feel it. The Nexus. It's calling to me." Raymond glanced back at his daughter, concern etched on his face. Before he could respond, a barrage of energy blasts struck their makeshift barrier, sending splinters flying. He ducked, shielding Cleo with his body. As the assault continued, Cleo's connection to the Nexus technology strengthened. She closed her eyes, focusing on the ebb and flow of energy around them. With a gesture, she sent out a localized electromagnetic pulse, causing the nearest Chimera operative's weapons to spark and malfunction. "Nice work, sweetheart," Raymond said, a hint of pride in his voice. He used the momentary advantage to reinforce their defenses, all while keeping a wary eye on Steele's advancing forces. At the edge of the clearing, Victor Crane and his extraction team arrived, assessing the chaotic scene. Victor's eyes narrowed as he recognized Steele's tactics. "Johnson, take your squad east," Victor commanded. "Create a diversion. The rest of you with me. We're going for Raymond and the girl." As Victor's team set their plan in motion, the Nexus fragment's energy output suddenly spiked. A visible wave of energy rippled through the air, causing the trees to sway and the ground to tremble. Raymond felt his bioadaptive suit falter, its enhanced capabilities flickering like a dying light. Commander Steele, ever the opportunist, noticed Raymond's sudden vulnerability. Within human speed, he closed the distance between them, his cybernetic enhancements allowing him to navigate the treacherous terrain with ease. Raymond braced himself for the impending confrontation, his mind racing through possible strategies. He may have lost his suit's enhancements, but he still had years of training and survival instincts to fall back on. As Steele launched himself at Raymond, Cleo's body began to emit a soft, pulsating glow. The light matched the rhythm of the Nexus fragment, creating a mesmerizing display that momentarily halted the conflict. "What the hell?" Steele muttered, his cybernetic eye struggling to process the phenomenon. Raymond used the distraction to his advantage, tackling Steele to the ground. The two men grappled, their fight a brutal dance of strength and skill. Suddenly, a series of explosions rocked the perimeter of the clearing. Victor's team had sprung into action, deploying non-lethal stun grenades to disorient Steele's forces. Through the chaos, Victor himself appeared, his eyes locking with Raymond's. "This way!" Victor shouted, gesturing towards a gap in the Chimera's defensive line. Raymond hesitated, torn between the chance for escape and the pulsing Nexus fragment. He glanced at Cleo, her body still glowing with otherworldly energy, then at the fragment that seemed to call to her. "We can't leave it," Cleo said, her voice carrying an authority beyond her years. "The fragment. It's part of me now. We need it." Raymond nodded, making his decision. "Victor," he called out, "we need to secure the fragment. Cover us." Victor's eyes widened, but he quickly adapted to the change in plans. "You heard the man," he ordered his team, suppressing fire on Steele's forces. "Buy them time." As Victor's team engaged the Chimera operatives, Raymond and Cleo made their way towards the Nexus fragment. Energy discharges intensified around them, warping the very fabric of the forest. Trees twisted into impossible shapes, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with potential. They reached the fragment just as Steele broke free from the chaos, charging towards them with single-minded drive. Raymond placed himself between Steele and Cleo, ready for whatever came next. The forest had become a nexus of competing interests and unpredictable power. As Cleo reached out to touch the pulsing fragment, the energy levels surged once more. Raymond braced himself, knowing that whatever happened next would change everything. In orbit, Admiral Thornton and High Counselor Zorn watched the massive energy spike with growing concern. Their decision to quarantine the area had come just in time. As they prepared for the next phase of their response, they could only hope that Raymond and Cleo would be able to contain the power they had unwittingly unleashed. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of human resilience and Arcturian technology. As energy crackled around them and the world seemed to hold its breath, Raymond, Cleo, and Steele faced each other, each aware that the next moments would shape the future of two worlds. Raymond's eyes darted between the pulsing Nexus fragment and his daughter, Cleo, her body still radiating an otherworldly glow. In that split second, he made his decision. "Victor," he called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Change of plans. We need to get Cleo out of here now." Victor nodded, quickly adapting to the new strategy. "Fall back," he ordered his team. "Cover their retreat." Raymond scooped Cleo into his arms, her slight frame feeling almost weightless as adrenaline coursed through his veins. He cast one last glance at the Nexus fragment, its pulsing energy a siren call of untold power and danger. But as he felt Cleo's rapid heartbeat against his chest, he knew he had made the right choice. They had barely taken a few steps when the Nexus fragment's energy output suddenly spiked. A visible wave of energy rippled through the air, expanding outward like a shockwave. Raymond felt his bioadaptive suit falter completely, its enhanced capabilities disappearing in an instant. The electromagnetic pulse swept across the battlefield, rendering all electronic equipment useless. Commander Steele stumbled, his cybernetic eye going dark as he let out a frustrated growl. The weapons of both Chimera operatives and Victor's team sparked and died, plunging the forest into an eerie silence. But the silence was short-lived. The pulse had affected more than just their technology. The local wildlife, already agitated by the earlier chaos, erupted into a panic frenzy. The ground trembled as a herd of deer burst through the underbrush, followed closely by smaller creatures fleeing in terror. "Move!" Raymond shouted, pushing through the confusion. He dodged falling branches and leapt over fallen logs. Cleo clutched tightly in his arms. Victor and his team formed a protective circle around them, using their non-powered weapons to keep Steele's disoriented forces at bay. Commander Steele, his face contorted with rage, barked orders to his team. After them, don't let them escape. The forest had become a treacherous obstacle course. Trees groaned and swayed, their roots destabilized by the energy waves still emanating from the Nexus fragment. Raymond's enhanced strength, while weakened, still gave him an edge as he navigated the chaos. Cleo stirred in his arms, her eyes fluttering open. "Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sounds of pursuit. "Something's happening to me." Raymond glanced down at his daughter, his breath catching in his throat. Cleo's skin had taken on a subtle, iridescent sheen, shimmering with each pulse of energy from the distant fragment. Her eyes, once a warm brown, now glowed with an inner light that pulsed in an alien rhythm. "It's okay, sweetheart," Raymond assured her, though uncertainty gnawed at him. "We're going to get you somewhere safe." They pushed on through the dense underbrush, the sounds of Steele's team growing fainter behind them. Victor took point, his crossbow at the ready as he scouted the path ahead. Suddenly, the forest canopy above them lit up with an otherworldly glow. A sleek, organic-looking ship descended through the trees, touching down in a small clearing directly between them and their extraction point. "What the hell is that?" Victor hissed, raising his crossbow. The ship's exterior rippled, and a hatch melted open. From within emerged several tall, insectoid figures, their exoskeletons gleaming in the strange light cast by their vessel. "Zarketh," Cleo murmured, her eyes wide with recognition. "They're called the Zarketh." Raymond stared in amazement at his daughter, wondering how she could possibly know that. Before he could ask, one of the alien figures stepped forward, its multifaceted eyes scanning their group with evident curiosity. "I am Scout Commander 19 Cha," the alien announced, its voice a melodious series of clicks and chirps that somehow translated clearly in their minds. "We come in peace, seeking knowledge of the energy source that drew us to this world." Raymond's mind raced, acutely aware of Steele's forces regrouping behind them and the Zarketh blocking their escape route. He glanced at Victor, who gave a subtle nod, ready to follow his lead. "I'm Raymond Hawthorne," he said, stepping forward with Cleo still in his arms. "We can share information about the energy source, but right now, we need safe passage. There are hostile forces pursuing us." 19 Cha's antennae twitched, processing this information. The other Zarketh conferred among themselves, their rapid-fire communication incomprehensible to human ears. As they deliberated, the forest around them began to change. Plants grew at an accelerated rate, vines twisting and leaves unfurling in a matter of seconds. The Nexus fragment's energy was reshaping the environment before their eyes. 19 Cha turned back to Raymond, mandibles clicking. "Your offer is intriguing, but our primary mission is to secure the energy source. We cannot dash." The alien's words were cut short as a series of energy blasts tore through the undergrowth. Steele's team had caught up, their weapons apparently restored to functionality. "Hand over the girl and the alien tech." Steele's voice boomed through the chaos. "This is your last warning." Raymond tensed, preparing for a fight. But before anyone could make a move, his comm unit crackled to life. Colonel Blackwood's voice came through, distorted but urgent. "Raymond, we're activating the teleportation device now. It's unstable, but it's your only shot. Godspeed." A small device on Raymond's belt began to hum, emitting a soft blue light. He locked eyes with Victor, silently conveying his gratitude and farewell. "Wait!" 19 Cha called out, realizing what was about to happen. But it was too late. In a blinding flash of light, Raymond and Cleo vanished, leaving behind a battlefield frozen in shocked silence. As the light faded, the forest erupted into chaos once more. The Zarketh scrambled to secure the area, while Steele's forces pushed forward, determined not to lose their quarry. Victor and his team used the confusion to their advantage, melting away into the rapidly mutating forest. As they made their escape, Victor couldn't help but wonder where Raymond and Cleo had been sent, and what new dangers awaited them on the other side of that teleportation beam. The Nexus fragment pulsed once more, its energy reshaping the world around it. And somewhere, lost in the streams of space and time, Raymond held his daughter close, hurtling towards an uncertain future. The air around them crackled with energy as the teleportation device activated, engulfing Raymond and Cleo in a blinding flash of light. In an instant, the chaotic forest scene vanished, replaced by the sterile environment of an underground facility. Raymond stumbled, his arms still wrapped protectively around Cleo as they materialized on a raised platform. The abrupt transition left them both disoriented, their senses reeling from the sudden shift in reality. "Easy there," a familiar voice called out as Raymond's vision began to clear. He looked up to see Dr. Zelena rushing towards them, her Arcturian features creased with concern. "Don't move yet. The teleportation can cause temporary side effects." Raymond nodded, fighting back a wave of nausea as he gently set Cleo down. His daughter swayed on her feet, her eyes unfocused as she tried to regain her balance. "Where are we?" Raymond managed to ask, his voice hoarse. "A secure joint human Arcturian facility," Dr. Zelena replied, activating a handheld medical scanner. "We evacuated here after the initial Nexus incident. Now, let me check your vitals." As the doctor ran her scans, Raymond took in their surroundings. The room was a hub of activity, with uniformed personnel moving purposefully between banks of advanced computer terminals. The air hummed with the sound of powerful machinery, and the walls were lined with screens displaying data streams and satellite imagery. Dr. Zelena's brow furrowed as she examined the readouts from her scanner. "Fascinating," she murmured, her attention focused on Cleo. "The changes in her hybrid physiology are accelerating. Her DNA is incorporating more Arcturian genetic markers at a rate I've never seen before." Before Raymond could ask for clarification, the doors to the chamber slid open, revealing Colonel Blackwood. The officer's face was a mask of terrifying tension as he strode towards them. "Raymond," Blackwood said, his tone clipped, "we need to debrief immediately. The situation has escalated beyond our worst projections." Raymond felt a surge of frustration. "My daughter needs medical attention. Whatever's happening out there can wait." Blackwood shook his head. "I'm afraid it can't. The Zarketh have arrived at the Nexus site, and we're on the brink of an interstellar incident. We need your first-hand account of what transpired in the forest." As if to underscore the urgency of the situation, alarms began to blare throughout the facility. Technicians scrambled to their stations, fingers flying over keyboards as they responded to the new threat. "Sir," a young analyst called out, "we're detecting multiple unidentified objects entering the solar system. They're on a direct course for Earth." Blackwood's face paled. He turned to Raymond, his voice low and urgent. "You see now why we need that debrief. Dr. Zelena, please continue your examination of Cleo. Raymond, with me." Reluctantly, Raymond followed the colonel to a nearby briefing room. As the door closed behind them, blocking out the chaos of the command center, Blackwood activated a holographic display. "This is the current situation," he explained, gesturing to the 3D representation of Earth and the approaching objects. "We believe the Nexus fragment's energy signature may have attracted the attention of other advanced civilizations. We're looking at a potential first contact scenario with multiple alien species." Raymond's mind raced as he processed the implications. What about Steele and his Chimera operatives? And the Zarketh we encountered in the forest? Blackwood's expression darkened. Steele has established a perimeter around the Nexus fragment. He's using portable energy shields to contain its effects, but the environmental impact is spreading. As for the Zarketh, they've begun studying the fragment from a distance. Their technology is interacting with the Nexus energy in ways we don't fully understand. As Raymond provided his account of the events in the forest, the facility around them continued to buzz with activity. In the medical bay, Dr. Zelena's examination of Cleo took an unexpected turn when the young girl inadvertently interfaced with the facility's computer systems. Alarms blared once again as classified information about Project Chimera and other secret operations began flooding the screens around Cleo. The girl's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light as data streamed through her consciousness. Emergency lockdown initiated, an automated voice announced. Heavy blast doors slammed shut throughout the facility, isolating different sections. In the briefing room, Raymond's head snapped up at the sound of the alarms. Cleo, he breathed, a cold fear gripping his heart. Blackwood was already moving, keying his comm unit. Status report. What's happening? The response came through, garbled with static. Sir, it's the girl. She's accessing classified systems. We can't stop the data breach. Raymond was on his feet in an instant, moving towards the door. Blackwood stepped in front of him, his face a mask of conflict. Raymond, wait. We need to assess the situation before dash. That's my daughter out there. Raymond snapped, his enhanced strength allowing him to easily push past the colonel. As Raymond raced through the corridors, the red glow of emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls. He could hear the distant sound of shouting and the pounding of boots as security teams mobilized. He rounded a corner and saw Dr. Zelena outside the medical bay, her face etched with worry. Raymond, she called out, Cleo's condition has become unstable. We need to move her to a containment unit for her own safety. Raymond's reply was cut short by a massive surge of energy that rippled through the facility. The lights flickered and died, plunging the complex into darkness. Emergency generators kicked in, bathing everything in a dim, blood-red glow. Through the chaos, Raymond could hear Cleo's voice, distant and distorted as if coming from everywhere at once. "Dad!" she called out. "Dad! I can see everything." "It's too much. Help me." With renewed perseverance, Raymond pushed forward, navigating the darkened corridors towards the source of Cleo's voice. As he moved, he could feel the bioadaptive suit reacting to his heightened emotional state, its fibers tightening and enhancing his senses. Behind him, he could hear Blackwood ordering security teams to intercept him. Ahead lay the unknown, his daughter's evolving powers, the threat of alien civilizations, and the uncontrolled force of the Nexus fragment. Raymond pressed on, knowing that every second counted. The fate of his daughter, and possibly the world, hung in the balance. As he approached the containment area, the air itself seemed to crackle with energy, a testament to the incredible power that now flowed through Cleo. He paused at the sealed door, heart pounding, and reached for the access panel. Whatever lay on the other side, he knew his life would never be the same. The containment door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a scene of barely controlled chaos. Cleo stood at the center of the room, her small frame engulfed in a pulsating blue aura that matched the distant rhythm of the Nexus fragment. The light cast eerie shadows across the walls, where sparking equipment and melted metal testified to the raw power coursing through her. Raymond's breath caught in his throat. "Cleo," he called out, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his heart. His daughter's eyes snapped to him, glowing with an otherworldly light. "Dad," she whispered, her voice echoing strangely in the charged air. "It hurts." Raymond took a step forward, only to be yanked back by Colonel Blackwood. "Wait," the officer warned, gesturing to where Dr. Zelena and a team of scientists were attempting to approach Cleo. An invisible barrier flickered into existence, repelling them with a crackle of energy. But when Raymond moved forward again, the barrier parted like water. His bioadaptive suit hummed, its fibers seeming to resonate with Cleo's energy field. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, kneeling before his daughter and enveloping her in his arms. The moment they touched, the chaotic energy stabilized. The pulsing aura dimmed, and the facility's systems began to normalize. Overhead lights flickered back to life, bathing the room in a harsh fluorescent glow. "I've got you," Raymond murmured, holding Cleo close. "You're safe now." Dr. Zelena approached cautiously, her scanner whirring. "Incredible," she breathed. "Her cellular structure. It's almost entirely Arcturian now." Before Raymond could process this information, Cleo stiffened in his arms. Her eyes went blank, and when she spoke, her voice had a metallic tinge. "Dad, I can see them," she said. "The forest. It's changing. And there are ships. So many ships coming." Colonel Blackwood stepped forward, his face grim. "What do you mean, Cleo? What ships?" Cleo's eyes refocused, and she turned to the colonel. "The K-Fax," she said, the alien name rolling off her tongue with perfect pronunciation. "They're coming for the Nexus." Alarms blared through the facility, cutting off any response. Security feeds on nearby monitors showed a team of heavily armed operatives forcing their way through checkpoints. Chimera, Blackwood spat, recognizing the insignia on their armor. "We need to move. Now." He keyed his comm unit, barking orders for an emergency evacuation. Dr. Zelena rushed to gather critical data and equipment while Raymond scooped Cleo into his arms. They raced through the corridors, the sounds of gunfire growing closer with each passing moment. Raymond's enhanced senses picked up the acrid smell of smoke and the metallic tang of spilled blood. As they neared the hangar, a massive explosion rocked the facility. Chunks of concrete rained down from the ceiling, forcing the group to dodge and weave. "They're trying to cut us off," Blackwood shouted over the din, drawing his sidearm. They burst into the hangar to find it already engulfed in chaos. A sleek, experimental aircraft sat on the launch pad, its engines spooling up. But between them and their escape route stood a squad of Chimera operatives, led by a figure whose cybernetic enhancements gleamed in the emergency lighting. "Hand over the girl," the cyborg operative demanded, his voice distorted by implants. Blackwood's security team opened fire, providing cover as Raymond sprinted for the aircraft. Bullets pinged off his bioadaptive suit, the material hardening to protect him and Cleo. They reached the aircraft ramp just as another explosion tore through the hangar. Raymond turned to see Blackwood go down, clutching his side. "Go!" the colonel shouted, returning fire even as blood seeped between his fingers. Raymond hesitated, torn between his duty to protect Cleo and his loyalty to Blackwood. The facility shuddered around them, Cleo's residual energy interacting with the battle damage to destabilize the entire structure. Dr. Zelena appeared at his side, medical kit in hand. "I'll get him," she said, dedication etched on her alien features. "Get Cleo on board." Raymond nodded, carrying his daughter into the aircraft. He strapped her into a specially designed containment seat before rushing back to the ramp. The hangar was collapsing now, support beams groaning as they gave way. Through the debris and gunfire, Raymond saw Dr. Zelena dragging Blackwood towards the aircraft. He reached out, ready to pull them to safety. A stray energy blast struck the ramp's hydraulics, causing it to begin closing. Raymond strained against the mechanism, his enhanced strength barely enough to keep it open. "Hurry!" he called out, watching as Zelena and Blackwood stumbled closer. The Chimera operatives were advancing, their cyborg leader charging up some kind of energy weapon. The aircraft's pilot was shouting about needing to take off immediately. As Zelena and Blackwood reached the bottom of the ramp, Raymond made a split-second decision. He released his hold on the ramp and lunged forward, grabbing both of them and using his augmented strength to haul them aboard in one powerful motion. The ramp slammed shut behind them as the aircraft's engines roared to full power. They were thrown to the floor as the pilot executed an emergency takeoff, barely clearing the collapsing hangar. Raymond scrambled to a viewport, watching as the underground facility imploded in on itself. The experimental aircraft climbed rapidly, breaking through the Earth's surface and soaring into the night sky. But their troubles were nowhere near the end. As they gained altitude, Raymond saw the horizon lit up with unnatural auroras, the spreading influence of the Nexus fragment. And high above, just visible to his enhanced vision, unfamiliar shapes moved against the stars. The K-Fax had arrived. The K-Fax had arrived. Raymond's mind raced as he processed the implications of Cleo's words and the looming threat above. The experimental aircraft continued its ascent, but the situation in the hangar remained critical. Colonel Blackwood was down, injured and exposed to enemy fire. In a split-second decision, Raymond turned to Dr. Zelena. "Secure Cleo in the aircraft. I'm going back for Blackwood." Before she could protest, Raymond was already moving. He leapt from the closing ramp, his bioadaptive suit absorbing the impact as he landed. The hangar was a maelstrom of gunfire and falling debris, but Raymond's enhanced senses allowed him to navigate the chaos. He sprinted towards Blackwood, dodging energy blasts and chunks of concrete. The colonel lay prone, his hand pressed against his bleeding side. Raymond reached him just as a support beam crashed down nearby, showering them with sparks. "I've got you, sir," Raymond grunted, hoisting Blackwood onto his shoulders in a fireman's carry. The return to the aircraft was a gauntlet of danger. Raymond's augmented strength and agility were pushed to their limits as he weaved through the battlefield. A Chimera operative lunged at him, but Raymond used his momentum to throw the attacker off balance. As they neared the aircraft, the ground beneath their feet began to shift. The entire facility was collapsing, the hangar floor cracking and sinking. Raymond poured every ounce of his enhanced speed into a final sprint. "Go! Go! Go!" he shouted as he leapt onto the closing ramp. The pilot didn't need to be told twice. The engines roared to full power, and the aircraft lifted off just as the hangar floor gave way entirely. Through the closing ramp, Raymond watched the underground base implode, swallowed by the earth. Inside the aircraft, Dr. Zelena immediately set to work on Blackwood's wounds. Her nimble fingers manipulated advanced medical equipment, sealing the injury and administering localized regenerative treatments. "He's stable," she announced after several tense minutes. "But he'll remain unconscious for now." Raymond nodded, then moved to check on Cleo. His daughter sat quietly in her containment seat, a faint blue aura still surrounding her. The specialized shielding of the seat pulsed softly, containing her energy emissions. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" Raymond asked, kneeling beside her. Cleo's eyes, still glowing with an otherworldly light, focused on him. "I'm okay, Dad, but something's happening. I can feel it." Before Raymond could inquire further, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Incoming transmission from Admiral Thornton." The Admiral's face appeared on a nearby screen, his expression grave. "The K-Fax fleet has entered Earth's orbit. They've positioned themselves between us and the moon. We're attempting to establish communication, but dash." The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by static. At the same moment, the aircraft shuddered violently. Massive electromagnetic pulse detected. The pilot called out, "It's coming from the K-Fax ships." The pulse washed over them, but the aircraft's Arcturian-based systems held firm. Outside, the night sky lit up with cascading failures of satellites and terrestrial power grids. "We've lost contact with ground control," the pilot reported. "All standard communication channels are down." Raymond moved to the aircraft sensor array, scanning for any remaining active signals. Fragmented transmissions filtered through, painting a grim picture of the situation on the ground. Cities plunge into darkness, transportation networks grinding to a halt, and panic spreading as the world's technology failed. As they flew towards their predetermined safe location, Cleo suddenly tensed in her seat. Her aura flared brighter, and she gasped as if in pain. "Dad!" The forest. "It's changing," she cried out. Raymond rushed to her side as she continued, her voice taking on an almost prophetic tone. "The pulse. It's making the Nexus energy grow. Everything's mutating." Realizing the gravity of the situation, Raymond relayed Cleo's warning to the pilot. "We need to change course. Head for the forest site." The pilot hesitated. "Sir, that's against protocol. We don't know what we're flying into." "Those are my orders," Raymond said firmly. "The fate of the entire planet might depend on it." As they approached the forest, the true scale of the disaster became apparent. A massive, pulsating dome of energy covered the area, visible even from their high altitude. Within its shifting surface, they caught glimpses of grotesquely altered landscapes and creatures. "Energy field expanding at an alarming rate," the pilot reported, his voice tight with stress. "At this pace, it'll reach populated areas within hours." Raymond's mind raced, considering their options. The K-Fax fleet hung silently in orbit, their intentions unknown. The world's defenses were crippled by the EMP. And now, this expanding field of mutation threatened to engulf everything. His eyes fell on Cleo, her small form still glowing with Nexus energy. In that moment, he made a decision that could change the course of history. "Take us in closer," he ordered the pilot. "Cleo might be our only chance to contain this." As the aircraft circled the perimeter of the energy dome, Cleo's own emissions intensified. She pressed her hands against the window, establishing a visible connection with the swirling energies below. The aircraft groaned under the strain of the competing energy fields. Alarms blared as systems struggled to compensate. "Hull integrity at 82% and falling," the pilot warned. "We can't get much closer." Raymond watched anxiously as Cleo concentrated, her body pulsing with blue light. Dr. Zelena monitored her vital signs, while the still unconscious Blackwood lay nearby, oblivious to the unfolding crisis. Outside the aircraft, the world hung in the balance. The mysterious K-Fax fleet loomed above, the forest mutation spread below, and humanity's fate rested in the hands of a young girl with powers beyond comprehension. Cleo's eyes snapped open, blazing with ethereal light. "I can feel it," she whispered. "I think I can control it, but, Dad, I'm scared." Raymond placed his hand on the containment field separating them, wishing he could embrace his daughter. "You can do this, Cleo. I believe in you. We're all here with you." As Cleo redoubled her efforts, the energy dome below began to fluctuate. The fate of the world hung in the balance, with the outcome far from certain. As Cleo focused her efforts, the energy dome below began to respond. Its chaotic swirls and pulses gradually synchronized with the rhythmic glow emanating from the young girl. Raymond watched in awe as his daughter's power reached out, attempting to tame the wild Nexus energies. Suddenly, the aircraft shuddered violently. A cascade of warning lights flooded the cockpit as the pilot fought to maintain control. "EM spike detected," the pilot shouted over the blaring alarms. "Systems are failing." Raymond braced himself against the bulkhead as the aircraft lurched sickeningly. Through the viewport, he saw the pulsating energy dome grow closer at an alarming rate. The pilot's face was a mask of concentration as he wrestled with the controls, trying to slow their descent. "Brace for impact," Raymond called out, securing Cleo in her containment seat and moving to protect the unconscious Blackwood. Dr. Zelena, her alien features set with willpower, grabbed the most critical medical equipment and held on tight. The ground rushed up to meet them, a twisted landscape of mutated flora visible through gaps in the energy field. With a bone-jarring impact, the aircraft plowed into a small clearing. Metal screamed as the fuselage scraped against massive, gnarled tree trunks. When they finally skidded to a stop, an eerie silence fell over the cabin. Raymond shook off his disorientation and quickly assessed the situation. "Status report," he barked. The pilot groaned, nursing a bloody gash on his forehead. "Aircraft's down, sir. We've breached the energy field." As if on cue, the protective shielding around them flickered and died. Raymond's bioadaptive suit immediately hardened in response to the changed environment. "Dr. Zelena, how's Blackwood?" Raymond asked, moving towards the exit hatch. The Arcturian doctor was already bent over the colonel, her nimble fingers working with a combination of human and alien medical tech. "His condition is deteriorating," she reported grimly. "The Nexus energy is interfering with his recovery." Raymond nodded, his mind racing. "Do what you can. I'm going to assess our situation." He cycled the hatch open, wincing as it stuck halfway. Using his augmented strength, Raymond forced it the rest of the way and stepped out into a world transformed. The clearing where they'd crashed was already changing. Twisted vines and bulbous growths crept along the aircraft's hull, as if the plant life was trying to consume the foreign object. The air itself felt thick and heavy, charged with unfamiliar energies. A movement caught Raymond's eye. He turned to see Cleo floating inches above the ground, her eyes blazing with ethereal light. The mutated plant life around her seemed to recoil, creating a small bubble of untouched earth. "Cleo," Raymond called out, concern evident in his voice. His daughter's gaze met his, and for a moment he saw a flicker of fear beneath the power that coursed through her. "Dad, I can feel everything. It's so much." Before Raymond could respond, a series of inhuman cries echoed from the surrounding forest. He whirled to face the threat, his enhanced senses on high alert. Through gaps in the twisted foliage, he caught glimpses of movement, creatures that defied easy classification, part animal and part plant. "Dr. Zelena," Raymond called back into the aircraft. "We've got company. How mobile is Blackwood?" "He's stable for now, but moving him would be risky," came the reply. Raymond's mind raced, formulating a plan. He needed to protect Cleo, secure their position, and somehow find a way to contain the spreading Nexus energy. As he contemplated their options, a new sound cut through the air, the unmistakable whine of alien engines. Looking up, Raymond saw a K-Fax landing craft pierce through the energy dome. Its biomechanical design was unlike anything he'd ever seen, a seamless blend of technology and organic matter. The craft touched down in a nearby clearing, and a hatch irised open. Raymond's breath caught in his throat as a K-Fax envoy emerged. The alien being was tall and ethereal, with translucent skin that seemed to shimmer with inner light. Its multiple elongated limbs moved with fluid grace as it stepped onto the mutated Earth. The envoy's attention immediately focused on Cleo, clearly drawn by her unique energy signature. Raymond moved protectively in front of his daughter, muscles tense for action. Suddenly, the underbrush to their left exploded outward. Commander Steele burst into view, his body horrifically altered by Nexus energy. Cybernetic implants fused with mutated plant matter, giving him a nightmarish appearance. "The girl comes with me," Steele snarled, his voice distorted and inhuman. Tendrils of corrupted vegetation writhed at his command, lashing out to separate Raymond from Cleo. The K-Fax envoy reacted, emitting a high-pitched frequency that sent the hybrid creatures scurrying for cover and caused the surrounding plant life to recoil. Caught in the middle of this three-way standoff, Raymond felt a surge of desperate protectiveness. But before he could act, Cleo's powers suddenly spiked. A wave of blue energy burst from her small form, washing over the immediate area. The mutated plants receded. Steele was thrown backward, and even the K-Fax envoy seemed momentarily stunned. In the wake of this display, an unnatural calm settled over the clearing. The K-Fax being recovered first, gliding towards Cleo with outstretched limbs. Raymond lunged to intercept, but found himself blocked by an invisible barrier. "Cleo!" he shouted, pounding against the unseen force field. Inside the shimmering dome of energy, Cleo and the K-Fax envoy faced each other. Tendrils of light began to intertwine between them, a communication beyond human understanding. Raymond watched helplessly as his daughter's fate, and perhaps that of the entire planet, hung in the balance of this unprecedented encounter. The transformed forest stood silent around them, a testament to the awesome and terrible power of the Nexus fragment. And high above, beyond the energy dome that now pulsed with newfound stability, the K-Fax fleet loomed in orbit. Whatever came next would shape the course of human history. Raymond's hand tightened into a fist as he searched for a way to reach his daughter, acutely aware that every second could mean the difference between salvation and catastrophe. Catastrophe. As Raymond's mind raced through potential solutions, the interaction between Cleo and the K-Fax envoy intensified dramatically. The air around them crackled with energy, and a swirling vortex of blue and silver light engulfed both figures. Raymond pressed against the invisible barrier, his heart pounding as he watched his daughter disappear into the maelstrom of light. The forest around them grew eerily silent, as if holding its breath in anticipation. Suddenly, the energy vortex collapsed in on itself with a thunderous clap. As the light dissipated, Raymond blinked rapidly to clear his vision. When his eyes finally focused, he saw Cleo standing beside the K-Fax envoy, both unharmed but changed. Cleo's appearance had subtly shifted. Her skin now bore faint, iridescent patterns that resembled the translucent flesh of the K-Fax. The invisible barrier that had separated them dissolved, and Raymond rushed forward, his arms outstretched. "Cleo!" he called out, his voice thick with relief and concern. As Raymond approached, he noticed a remarkable transformation taking place in their surroundings. The mutated landscape began to revert to its original state. Grotesque plants shrank and withered before his eyes, while the hybrid creatures that had lurked in the shadows fled into the receding forest. The oppressive dome of Nexus energy that had threatened to engulf the world now contracted, concentrating around the original crash site of the fragment. It was as if Cleo's interaction with the K-Fax had imposed order on the chaos. The alien envoy turned its attention to Raymond, gesturing gracefully towards its landing craft. The invitation was clear, but Raymond hesitated. His gaze darted between the alien vessel and the crashed aircraft where Dr. Zelena and Colonel Blackwood remained. Before he could voice his concerns, a commotion from the Tribunal drew their attention. Commander Steele burst into view, his body a horrific fusion of man, machine, and plant matter. Behind him, a group of equally transformed Project Chimera operatives emerged from the twisted foliage. Steele's distorted voice rang out across the clearing. "The girl and the technology belong to us." He raised a mutated arm, and hardened projectiles of plant material launched towards Raymond and the K-Fax envoy. Raymond's enhanced reflexes kicked in, courtesy of his bioadaptive suit. He dodged and deflected several of the organic missiles, positioning himself protectively in front of Cleo. The K-Fax envoy responded by emitting a high-frequency pulse that momentarily stunned Steele and his team. Seizing the opportunity, Raymond sprinted towards the crashed aircraft. "Dr. Zelena," he shouted, "we need to move now." The Arcturian doctor emerged from the wreckage, supporting the still unconscious form of Colonel Blackwood. Raymond quickly assessed the situation and made a snap decision. "The K-Fax craft is our best chance," he said, helping Dr. Zelena maneuver Blackwood's limb body. "We can't stay here." As they hurried towards the alien vessel, Steele and his operatives recovered from the sonic assault. The mutated commander let out an inhuman roar and charged forward, his limbs elongating grotesquely to cover the distance. The group reached the K-Fax landing craft just as Steele closed in. Raymond turned to face the threat, ready to buy time for the others to board. But before he could engage, Cleo stepped forward, her eyes glowing with newfound power. A wave of energy pulsed from her small form, causing the craft's biomechanical systems to respond. The entrance sealed shut, cutting off Steele's advance mere inches from Raymond's position. The ship's engines hummed to life, and they began to ascend. Through the viewports, Raymond watched as Steele's mutated form grew smaller, his limbs grasping futilely at the retreating craft. The Nexus-corrupted forest shrank away, and the energy dome that had contained it began to dissipate. As they breached the upper atmosphere, a new crisis became apparent. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a tense standoff between the Arcturian fleet and the K-Fax armada in Earth orbit. By the stars, Dr. Zelena breathed, her alien features contorted with worry. High Counselor Zorn must have mobilized our entire defense force. Raymond's mind raced, considering the potential for catastrophic conflict. But before he could formulate a plan, Cleo stepped towards the ship's control interface. Her hand hovered over the alien technology, and to Raymond's amazement, the systems responded to her touch. Cleo's voice, tinged with an otherworldly resonance, filled the cabin. "I can feel them all, the ship, the fleets, even Earth itself. We need to stop this before it's too late." As both fleets powered up their weapon systems, Cleo closed her eyes in concentration. The ship's communication array pulsed with energy, and a complex message broadcast outward. It was a harmony of human language, Arcturian harmonics, and K-Fax energy patterns, a call for peace that transcended the boundaries of species. The effect was immediate. Weapons powered down, and a fragile calm settled over the orbital theater. Taking advantage of the lull, their craft docked with a massive K-Fax mothership that dwarfed even the largest Arcturian vessels. As they disembarked, Raymond placed a protective hand on Cleo's shoulder. "Whatever happens next," he said softly, "we face it together." The K-Fax envoy led them through winding biomechanical corridors towards the heart of the ship. Raymond couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into the unknown, with the fate of Earth hanging in the balance. They entered a vast chamber where the K-Fax Leadership Council awaited, beings of such advanced evolution that they seemed more energy than matter. Holographic displays materialized around them, showing real-time images of a changed Earth. As the Council began to communicate through a mixture of telepathic impressions and energy fluctuations, Raymond steeled himself for what was to come. The future of humanity, and perhaps the galaxy itself, would be decided here. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the mothership. Security feeds flickered to life, showing multiple breaches in the lower decks. Raymond's blood ran cold as he recognized the mutated form of Commander Steele, leading a team of transformed operatives through the K-Fax defenses. The Council's energy patterns shifted, conveying urgency and concern. They turned their attention to Cleo, whose hybrid physiology now held the key to resolving this crisis. As Steele and his forces fought their way closer to the central chamber, Raymond knew they were running out of time. He looked at Cleo, seeing both his little girl and the powerful being she had become. "What do we need to do?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his insides. The K-Fax Council's response came not in words, but in a surge of knowledge that filled his mind. Their plan was daring, dangerous, and quite possibly their only hope. Raymond took a deep breath and nodded. "All right," he said, turning to Dr. Zelena. "We need to wake Blackwood. Whatever's coming, we'll need all hands on deck." As the doctor worked to revive the colonel, Raymond watched the ship's biomechanical systems reconfigure around them, forming a defensive perimeter. At the center, an energy matrix took shape, with Cleo positioned at its heart. The air hummed with power as Cleo's body began to glow, channeling the combined energies of 3 advanced civilizations. Raymond's hand tightened on his weapon as the sounds of battle drew nearer. Whatever came next would determine the fate of not just Earth, but the delicate balance of power in the galaxy. And at the center of it all stood Cleo, his daughter, humanity's hope, and the living conduit of forces beyond imagination. Comprehension. The fate of Earth hung in the balance as Cleo channeled the combined energies of 3 advanced civilizations. A groan from behind caught Raymond's attention. He turned to see Colonel Blackwood stirring, Dr. Zelena hovering over him with concern etched on her alien features. "What's our situation?" Blackwood asked, his voice hoarse as he struggled to sit up. Raymond quickly filled him in, watching as the colonel's eyes widened at the sight of Cleo, suspended in the energy matrix. Despite his disorientation, Blackwood's military training kicked in immediately. "We need to secure this chamber," he said, pushing himself to his feet with a grimace. "If steel breaches our defenses..." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the ship. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing multiple breaches in the lower decks. Raymond's stomach churned as he watched the mutated form of Commander Steele tearing through the K-Fax defenses. The K-Fax Council's energy patterns shifted, conveying urgent instructions. The ship's biomechanical systems began to reconfigure, forming a defensive perimeter around the central chamber. Walls thickened, corridors shifted, and barrier fields sprang to life. "They're trying to slow Steele's advance," Raymond explained, watching the displays. "But it won't hold him for long." Blackwood nodded, already assessing their options. "We need to coordinate with the K-Fax security forces. Dr. Zelena, can you interface with their systems?" The Arcturian doctor nodded, her fingers dancing over a nearby control panel. "I'm patching us into their communication network now." As Blackwood began issuing orders, Raymond turned his attention back to Cleo. Her small form glowed with an otherworldly light, the energy matrix around her pulsing in time with her heartbeat. He could sense the raw power flowing through her, a fusion of technologies beyond his comprehension. Suddenly, the ship shuddered. Raymond stumbled, catching himself on a nearby console. The display showed Steele and his mutated operatives breaching the outer defenses of the central chamber. "They're adapting to our attacks," Dr. Zelena called out, her voice tight with worry. "The Nexus energy allows them to absorb and redirect our weapons." Raymond watched in horror as Steele, now more plant than man, used his elongated limbs to tear through walls and overpower K-Fax guards. The mutated commander's face was a mask of rage and tenacity, his eyes fixed on the central chamber on Cleo. Without hesitation, Raymond activated his bioadaptive suit. He felt the familiar surge of energy as the suit enhanced his strength and reflexes. "I'll hold them off," he said, moving towards the chamber's entrance. "Keep Cleo safe." As he stepped out into the corridor, Raymond felt the ship's architecture shifting around him. Walls moved, creating choke points and dead ends. He used this to his advantage, leading Steele's advance team into traps and ambushes. Raymond's enhanced reflexes allowed him to dodge energy blasts and mutated projectiles. He engaged the intruders in close combat, using their own momentum against them. But for every operative he took down, 2 more seemed to take their place. Back in the central chamber, Cleo's connection to the ship deepened. Her eyes, glowing with an inner light, darted back and forth beneath closed lids. Through her link with the K-Fax database, she began to unravel the true nature of the Nexus technology. Images and information flooded her mind. The origin of the Nexus, its intended purpose, and crucially, a method to potentially reverse its effects. But before she could process this revelation, a new threat emerged. The K-Fax Council, assessing the escalating danger, activated advanced containment protocols. The central chamber began to separate from the rest of the ship, transforming into a self-contained pod. "They're cutting us off," Blackwood shouted, steadying himself as the chamber shuddered. "We're going to detach from the main ship." Raymond, still locked in combat with Steele's forces, realized the implications. If they separated now, Steele would be left behind, but so would he. Making a split-second decision, Raymond disengaged from his current fight and sprinted back towards the central chamber. He could hear Steele's inhuman roar behind him, feel the rush of air as mutated limbs grasped for him. Just as the chamber doors began to seal, Raymond dove through the narrowing gap. He rolled to his feet, coming face to face with the nightmarish form of Commander Steele. Time seemed to slow as Raymond took in the scene. Blackwood and Dr. Zelena worked feverishly at the ship's controls, preparing for their unplanned descent. The K-Fax Council's energy forms pulsed with anxiety. And at the center of it all, Cleo remained suspended in the energy matrix, her face serene despite the chaos around her. Steele's mutated body filled the doorway, plant-like tendrils seeking purchase on the chamber's interior. His voice, distorted and barely human, rasped out a single word. "Mine!" Raymond's muscles tensed, ready for the fight of his life. As he prepared to engage Steele, he heard Cleo's voice in his mind, calm, assured, and filled with newfound power. "It's time, Dad," she said. "Stand back." A massive pulse of energy erupted from Cleo's body, washing over the entire chamber. Raymond felt it pass through him, leaving a tingling sensation in its wake. But its effect on Steele was far more dramatic. The commander's mutated form began to ripple and warp. The plant matter that had fused with his body started to wither and fall away. His elongated limbs retracted, cybernetic implants detached, and before Raymond's eyes, Steele's body began to revert to its original human state. As Steele collapsed, unconscious but alive, Raymond turned back to Cleo. The energy matrix around her dissipated, and she slowly descended to the chamber floor. Her appearance had changed once again. Her skin now bore intricate, shifting patterns that seemed to reflect the merged technologies she had channeled. Raymond rushed to catch her as she stumbled, her eyes fluttering open. "Dad," she whispered, her voice tinged with an otherworldly resonance. "I know what we need to do." Before Raymond could respond, the pod shuddered violently. Colonel Blackwood's voice rang out, tense but controlled. "Brace for impact. We're going down." The world outside the viewports became a blur of fire and atmosphere as the pod plummeted towards Earth. Raymond held Cleo close, his bio-adaptive suit expanding to protect them both as they prepared for a crash landing that would change the course of human history. The pod's descent slowed as emergency thrusters engaged, but the impact still rattled everyone inside. Raymond's bio-adaptive suit absorbed most of the shock, protecting both him and Cleo. As the dust settled, he looked around to assess the situation. Colonel Blackwood was already on his feet, checking the pod systems. Dr. Zelena moved swiftly to tend to the unconscious Steele, her medical training kicking in despite the circumstances. The K-Fax Council members, their energy forms flickering, began to stabilize the pod's damaged systems. "Status report," Blackwood called out, his voice steady despite the chaos. Raymond helped Cleo to her feet, noticing the intricate patterns on her skin pulsing with a soft light. "We're okay," he responded, keeping a protective arm around his daughter. Before anyone could say more, the pod's main view screen flickered to life. Admiral Thornton's face appeared, his expression a mix of relief and concern. "Thank God you're alive," he said. "We've tracked your descent. Rescue teams are en route to your location." As Thornton spoke, Raymond noticed movement outside the viewports. The crash had left them in a clearing of broken trees and scorched earth. But at the edges of this destruction, plant life was already beginning to grow at an accelerated rate. "Admiral," Raymond interrupted, "we've got a situation here. The surrounding area. It's changing." Thornton's brow furrowed. "Changing how?" Before Raymond could respond, Cleo stepped forward. Her voice, tinged with that otherworldly resonance, carried a newfound authority. "The Nexus energy," she explained. "It's not just affecting technology. It's altering the very fabric of life on Earth. Over the next hours, as rescue teams arrived and a perimeter was established around the crash site, the true extent of the situation became clear. The Nexus incident had triggered a global transformation, with reports flooding in from around the world of rapidly mutating ecosystems and malfunctioning technology. In response to the crisis, a joint human Arcturian K-Fax research base was quickly established around the crash site. The pod, now embedded in the Earth, became the central hub of their operations. Scientists and military personnel from all three species worked tirelessly to understand and control the residual Nexus energy. At the heart of these efforts was Cleo. Her unique abilities made her the key to unraveling the mysteries of the Nexus. Raymond, ever protective, stayed by her side as she worked with the research team. Weeks passed in a blur of experiments and breakthroughs. Cleo demonstrated an uncanny ability to manipulate the Nexus energy, reversing small-scale mutations in the surrounding forest. Each success brought them closer to developing a method to address the global effects of the incident. One morning, as Raymond watched Cleo work with a team of scientists, Admiral Thornton approached him. The Admiral's face was grim, the weight of recent events evident in the new lines around his eyes. "We've got a situation," Thornton said quietly. "The public knows about the aliens now. There's unrest in major cities across the globe. Some people are panicking. Others are demanding answers." Raymond nodded, unsurprised. They had known this day would come. "What's the plan?" "We're organizing a summit," Thornton explained. "World leaders, the Arcturian High Council, and the K-Fax leadership. We need to decide on a unified approach to this crisis." As preparations for the summit began, tensions rose within the research base. Human leaders, impressed by the potential of the Nexus technology, pushed for continued research. The Arcturians, led by High Counselor Zorn, advocated for caution. The K-Fax Council, true to their role as galactic custodians, argued for complete neutralization of the Nexus energy. Amidst these debates, Colonel Blackwood approached Raymond with a bold proposal. "We need to address the public directly," he said. "A global broadcast. Show them that we're working together, aliens and humans. And we need Cleo to be the face of it." Raymond's protective instincts flared, but he knew Blackwood was right. Cleo's unique position made her the perfect bridge between worlds. As they prepared for the broadcast, an unexpected complication arose. Sensors detected a surge of Nexus energy at the original crash site, forming a swirling vortex that threatened to destabilize their containment measures. Cleo insisted on investigating, her skin patterns glowing intensely as they approached the site. Raymond, his bioadaptive suit at the ready, stayed close as she faced the pulsing vortex. Using her abilities, Cleo reached out to the swirling energy. The vortex resisted, pushing back with unexpected force. Raymond anchored her, lending his strength as she channeled the conflicting energies. Just as it seemed the vortex might overwhelm them, the K-Fax Council members activated an ancient artifact. The device interfaced with Cleo's hybrid physiology, amplifying her abilities. With renewed strength, Cleo exerted her will on the Nexus energy. The vortex began to shrink, coalescing into a compact sphere. Carefully, she guided it into an Arcturian containment device. As the energy stabilized, Raymond looked at his daughter with a mixture of pride and awe. The little girl he had raised was now a being of immense power, perhaps humanity's greatest hope for navigating this new reality. With the immediate crisis averted, they returned to the base to prepare for the broadcast. As cameras were set up and final checks were made, Raymond couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger journey. Just before they went live, Admiral Thornton pulled Raymond aside. His face was pale, his voice low and urgent. "We've detected something," he said. "An anomaly approaching our solar system. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." Raymond's mind raced with the implications. As he turned to join Cleo on the broadcast stage, he realized that their greatest challenges might still lie ahead. Ahead, as Raymond processed this new information, Cleo's voice cut through his thoughts. "Dad, it's time," she said, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Raymond nodded, pushing his concerns aside for the moment. They had a broadcast to make. The cameras rolled, and Cleo began to address the world. Her voice, tinged with that ethereal resonance, carried a calm authority that belied her youth. She explained the Nexus incident, the presence of alien allies, and the ongoing efforts to stabilize the situation. As Cleo spoke, Raymond noticed Admiral Thornton conferring urgently with Colonel Blackwood in the background. Something was clearly amiss. The broadcast concluded, and Cleo sagged slightly, the effort of maintaining her composure evident. Raymond steadied her, then turned to Thornton. "What's the situation, Admiral?" Thornton's face was grim. "We detected an anomaly approaching our solar system. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." The next hours were a whirlwind of activity. The research base transformed into a hub of frantic preparation as scientists and military personnel from all three species converged to analyze the approaching phenomenon. Raymond found himself in the thick of it, working alongside Arcturian energy manipulators and K-Fax biotech experts to interpret the flood of incoming data. Cleo, her skin patterns pulsing with increased intensity, interfaced directly with the combined sensor arrays. "It's massive," she reported, her eyes unfocused as she processed the information. "And it's alive somehow. Not organic, but not fully mechanical either." High Counselor Zorn, his crystalline form shimmering with agitation, conferred with the K-Fax leadership. "We must prepare for all contingencies," he insisted. "If this entity proves hostile." Admiral Thornton nodded grimly. "Agreed. I'm establishing a joint task force immediately. We need to be ready for contact. Or conflict." As the hours ticked by, more details emerged. The anomaly was, in fact, a colossal spacecraft, its design incorporating elements of Nexus technology on an unprecedented scale. And it was headed straight for Earth. Raymond watched as global leaders initiated emergency protocols via holographic conferences. Cities began evacuating to designated safe zones, and military forces worldwide went on high alert. In orbit, the combined Arcturian and K-Fax fleets repositioned, integrating with Earth's satellite network to form a defensive perimeter. The sheer scale of the cooperation between the three species was awe-inspiring, yet Raymond couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. Cleo's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Dad, I think I can help." She gestured to the contained Nexus energy sphere from their earlier encounter. Its energy signature. "It's fluctuating in sync with the approaching vessel. I might be able to use it to communicate." Raymond's protective instincts flared. "It's too dangerous, Cleo. We don't know Dash." "It's our best shot," she interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. "We need information and fast." After a heated debate with the leadership, a specialized chamber was constructed. Raymond stood watch as Cleo interacted with the Nexus sphere, her face a mask of concentration. Suddenly, the sphere pulsed violently. A holographic projection materialized in the chamber, a being that seemed to be a fusion of organic matter and Nexus technology. "Greetings," the being said, its voice resonating on multiple frequencies. "We are the progenitors, creators of the Nexus, and we have awakened." The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled leaders. The approaching vessel was a progenitor arc ship, carrying thousands of hibernating ancients. As Cleo facilitated communications, the implications became clear. The progenitors had been awaiting the emergence of a civilization capable of wielding their technology. Earth's recent events had triggered their return. In the following hours, Raymond found himself recruited to lead ground operations for a specialized strike team. As he trained with a diverse unit of humans, Arcturians, and K-Fax, he couldn't help but marvel at the rapid changes. The progenitor arc ship entered the solar system, decelerating as it approached Mars' orbit. Earth's combined defenses stood ready, even as diplomatic channels remained open. Raymond watched the massive vessel on the monitors, his hand on Cleo's shoulder. As the ship came to a stop, the tension in the command center was palpable. "What now?" Raymond murmured. Cleo's eyes glowed with that otherworldly light. "Now," she said, "we make history." Cleo's eyes glowed with that otherworldly light. "Now," she said, "we make contact." Her words hung in the air for a moment before a flurry of activity erupted in the command center. Admiral Thornton barked orders to his staff, coordinating with the Arcturian and K-Fax representatives to establish a unified communication protocol. Raymond squeezed Cleo's shoulder reassuringly. "Are you ready for this?" She nodded, her skin patterns pulsing with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "I have to be." As Earth's combined defense forces maintained their vigilant watch, Cleo took her position at the specially designed interface console. The contained Nexus sphere hummed with energy, its surface rippling as if alive. Cleo placed her hands on the console, closing her eyes as she reached out with her mind. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the young hybrid as she bridged the gap between worlds. Suddenly, the holographic displays flickered to life, filling the air with a swirling tapestry of light and color. The progenitor's voice, a harmonic blend of tones, resonated through the chamber. "We seek peaceful dialogue," the being stated, its form shifting and adapting as it spoke. "Our arrival marks a pivotal moment in your species' development." Admiral Thornton stepped forward, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We welcome the opportunity for peaceful exchange. However, we must ensure the safety of our world and its inhabitants." The negotiations unfolded over the next several hours, with Cleo acting as the primary conduit. Raymond watched in awe as his daughter deftly navigated the complex interplay of alien concepts and human concerns. As the discussions progressed, a decision was reached to allow a small progenitor delegation to land on Earth. Raymond found himself thrust into action, leading a team to reinforce the base's defenses. "Deploy the energy shields here, and here," he instructed, pointing to key locations on a holographic map. "And I want those new sensor arrays online and calibrated within the hour." His team, a mix of human, Arcturian, and K-Fax personnel, moved with practiced efficiency. As they worked, Raymond couldn't help but marvel at how quickly they had adapted to working together. The day of the progenitor's arrival dawned clear and bright. Raymond stood at attention beside Cleo as the sleek, organic-looking shuttle descended from the sky. Its surface seemed to ripple and flow, adapting to the atmosphere as it landed. With a soft hiss, the shuttle's hatch opened. 3 progenitor representatives emerged, their forms a mesmerizing blend of biological and technological elements. Their bodies shifted and flowed, adjusting to the Earth's environment in real time. Admiral Thornton, High Counselor Zorn, and the K-Fax leadership stepped forward to greet the visitors. Raymond tensed, ready to act if needed, but the exchange remained cordial. The lead progenitor spoke, its voice carrying that same harmonic quality they had heard earlier. "We come to share knowledge and to test potential." As the initial pleasantries concluded, the group moved to a specially prepared conference area. Raymond followed, keeping a watchful eye on Cleo as she assisted with communication. The negotiations took an unexpected turn when the progenitors revealed the true nature of the Nexus technology. It was created as a test, they explained, to identify species worthy of joining a greater galactic community. A murmur ran through the assembled leaders. Admiral Thornton leaned forward, his expression a mix of curiosity and caution. "And what is your assessment of Earth?" The progenitor's form shimmered, its colors shifting in what Raymond interpreted as approval. "Your handling of the Nexus incident, particularly the cooperation between your species, has shown great promise." As the progenitors outlined their proposal for a series of trials to further assess Earth's readiness, alarms suddenly blared throughout the base. Raymond's hand flew to his communicator as reports flooded in. "The Nexus sphere," a technician's voice crackled over the comm. "It's expanding." Raymond turned to see the contained sphere pulsing violently, its energy field growing rapidly. Cleo's eyes widened as she sensed a change. "It's responding to the progenitors," she exclaimed, her skin patterns flaring brightly. Without hesitation, Raymond activated the prototype shield generator they had developed. A shimmering barrier sprang to life, containing the expanding Nexus field. The progenitor representatives observed this with obvious interest. "An impressive display of adaptive technology," one remarked. As the immediate crisis subsided, negotiations resumed with renewed vigor. The progenitors agreed to share limited Nexus technology and assist in stabilizing the global effects of the original incident. Raymond found himself presented with schematics for an improved version of his bioadaptive suit. He studied the designs, noting the integration of Nexus technology. "This could revolutionize our understanding of human-alien interaction," he mused, already considering the potential applications. As the day's events drew to a close, Raymond and Cleo stood together, watching the progenitor shuttle ascend back to their Ark ship. The sky above was alive with vessels from multiple species, a testament to the new galactic alliance forming. Cleo turned to her father, her eyes shining with a mix of excitement and perseverance. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us." Raymond nodded, his mind already racing with plans for the trials to come. "Indeed we do. But if anyone can lead us through this, it's you." As they turned back towards the base, ready to begin preparations for the challenges ahead, Raymond couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of a new era. The future, with all its uncertainties and possibilities, stretched out before them like an uncharted galaxy, like an uncharted sea of stars. Raymond and Cleo shared a knowing glance, their perseverance hardening as they turned to face the challenges ahead. In the months that followed, the research base transformed into a hive of activity. Raymond found himself at the center of an unprecedented collaborative effort, working tirelessly to assemble a team that would represent the best of human, Arturian, and K-Fax expertise. Cleo's abilities grew exponentially as she trained with the progenitors, her unique connection to the Nexus energy deepening with each passing day. Raymond watched with a mixture of pride and concern as his daughter pushed the boundaries of her potential. As the day of the first trial approached, Raymond stood in the equipment bay, examining his newly upgraded bioadaptive suit. The progenitor Nexus technology seamlessly integrated with the existing design, creating a marvel of engineering that seemed to anticipate his every move. "How does it feel?" Cleo asked, her skin patterns pulsing with curiosity as she entered the room. Raymond flexed his arms, marveling at the suit's responsiveness. "Like a second skin. It's incredible." The morning of the trial arrived with a palpable sense of anticipation. Raymond and Cleo led their team into the specially designed chamber, a feat of combined alien technologies capable of generating complex Nexus-powered simulations. As the chamber doors sealed shut, Admiral Thornton's voice crackled over the comm system. "Remember, this is more than just a test of your abilities. It's a chance to prove that humanity and its allies are ready for a place in the galactic community. Good luck." The air shimmered, and suddenly the sterile chamber transformed into a vast, alien landscape. Towering crystal formations jutted from the ground, their surfaces refracting light in impossible patterns. The team stood in awe for a moment before Raymond's voice snapped them back to attention. "All right, people, let's move out. Keep your wits about you and remember your training." They set off across the otherworldly terrain, each step bringing new challenges. Raymond's suit adapted seamlessly to the changing environment, allowing him to navigate treacherous crystal outcroppings with ease. Cleo's Nexus abilities proved invaluable as she deciphered abstract energy patterns that blocked their path. As they progressed, the trials grew increasingly difficult. In one particularly grueling challenge, the team found themselves faced with a massive energy barrier, its surface rippling with complex equations. It's a puzzle, Cleo realized, her eyes glowing as she interfaced with the Nexus energy. We need to solve it to pass through. Raymond nodded, turning to the Arcturian energy manipulator and K-Fax biotech expert on their team. Let's pool our knowledge. There's got to be a solution here. For hours, they worked tirelessly, combining human intuition with alien expertise. Finally, with a triumphant cry from Cleo, the barrier dissolved, revealing the path forward. As they pushed on, Raymond noticed the progenitors observing their progress, occasionally introducing unexpected variables to test their adaptability. During one such moment, the landscape suddenly shifted, plunging each team member into a personal nightmare scenario. Raymond found himself in a dark, oppressive space, watching helplessly as a shadowy figure threatened Cleo. He fought against the rising panic, reminding himself that this was an illusion. Focusing on the feel of his suit, the reality of the technology against his skin, he began to see through the deception. Nearby, Cleo grappled with her own fear, a vision of herself consumed by Nexus energy, losing all traces of her human identity. She closed her eyes, centering herself in the way Raymond had taught her years ago. Suddenly, Raymond felt a familiar presence in his mind. The mental link he shared with Cleo, strengthened by their experiences and the Nexus energy, flared to life. Together, they pushed back against the illusions, their combined will shattering the false reality. As the nightmarish visions faded, Raymond and Cleo found themselves back in the alien landscape, their team looking to them with newfound respect. The progenitor observers shimmered with what seemed to be approval. The final trial materialized before them, a holographic representation of a planet teeming with primitive life. A progenitor voice echoed through the chamber, presenting them with a choice. Use their accumulated knowledge and power to reshape the planet in their image, or allow its native civilization to develop naturally, even if it meant a longer and more difficult path to advancement. The team erupted into debate. Some argued for intervention, citing the potential to prevent suffering and accelerate progress. Others, including Raymond, advocated for non-interference. We can't make this decision for them, Raymond argued. Our own history has shown the value of learning from our mistakes, of earning our advances. Cleo nodded in agreement. And who are we to say our way is the only right path? There's beauty in diversity, in allowing different cultures to find their own ways. After intense discussion, the team reached a consensus. They would not intervene, choosing instead to respect the natural development of the simulated civilization. As they made their choice, the chamber began to power down. The alien landscape faded away, leaving them standing in the now familiar confines of the trial room. The progenitor representatives materialized before them, their forms shifting with what Raymond interpreted as excitement. You have not only passed our trials, the lead progenitor announced, its harmonic voice filling the chamber, but exceeded our expectations. Your species has demonstrated not just technological prowess, but the moral and ethical readiness required for full membership in our galactic coalition. Raymond and Cleo exchanged a look of stunned joy as the implications of the progenitor's words sank in. They had done it. Earth and its allies had proven themselves worthy of joining the greater galactic community. As the team celebrated their success, Raymond felt a surge of pride. They had faced unimaginable challenges and emerged stronger, more united. And at the center of it all stood Cleo, the once unwanted alien child who had become the key to humanity's bright future among the stars. The progenitor approached Raymond and Cleo, its form shimmering with approval. In recognition of your unique bond and the crucial role you played, we have a gift for you. It extended a hand, revealing a small, pulsing orb of Nexus energy. This stable Nexus core will allow you to continue developing your abilities and your connection to each other. As Raymond accepted the gift, he felt a warmth spread through him, the Nexus energy resonating with the technology in his suit. Beside him, Cleo's skin patterns glowed with excitement at the possibilities this new development presented. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity as Earth prepared to formally join the Galactic Coalition. Raymond and Cleo found themselves at the center of it all, their story serving as a powerful symbol of humanity's potential for growth and acceptance. As they stood together on the steps of the United Nations headquarters in New York, waiting to be called in for the ceremony that would change Earth's future forever, Raymond couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. "Ready for our next big adventure?" he asked Cleo, a smile playing on his lips. Cleo's eyes sparkled with a mixture of human emotion and alien wisdom. "Always, Dad. As long as we're together, I'm ready for anything." With a deep breath, they stepped forward, prepared to lead humanity into a new era of galactic cooperation and discovery.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.